Welcome to the April 17th, 2012 Shakopee City Council meeting. I call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Punt?
Here.
Councilor Lehman?
Here.
Councilor Clay?
Here.
Councilor Whiting?
Here.
Mayor Tabke?
Here. All stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight? Mr. McNeil.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a deletion from the agenda, and that would be 10E2. And then when we get to that point, there's also a related item on the EDA agenda for item 4, and both of these relate to the city's business subsidy policy. We need to have a public hearing before you have a discussion on that, so that will be brought back at a future time.
Okay.
What was the other one?
The other,
It's on the
EDA 4
EDA.
and 10E2.
Everybody got that? Any other additions or corrections to the agenda? All right, entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Agenda passes unanimously. Consent business. Anyone have any items removed from consent business tonight? Councilor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
Seconded by Councilor Clay. Mr. McNeil, will you please read?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4A1 authorizes the execution of a Scott County Standard Road Maintenance Agreement for the mowing of Scott County highway rights-of-way within the city, except for those not otherwise covered by a separate agreement. 4C1 authorizes agreement for concession stand operations at Joe Schlepper Stadium, Tapa Softball Complex, and 17th Avenue Sports Complex. 4D1 and 2 declares miscellaneous items and 4 vehicles held by the Shakopee Police Department to be surplus property and authorizes disposal through auction. 4F1 authorizes bills and pass-throughs to be paid in the amount totaling $1,373,693.76. 4F2 approves minutes of the City Council meeting of April 3rd, 2012. 4F3 approves an application and grants a temporary on-sale liquor license to the Church of St. Mark, 350 South Atwood Street for their July 28th and 29th Yulee Fest. 4F4 adopts a resolution providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation improvement refunding bond series 2012A for May 15th, 2012, in the proposed aggregate principal of $4.96 million. 4F5 authorizes the purchase of a cable television playback system upgrade from Alpha Video plus related materials at a total project cost not to exceed $27,500. 4F6 authorizes the purchase and installation of a new 80-ton Trane air conditioning unit for the library building from Harris Companies at a cost not to exceed $72,600, and a new 60-ton Trane air conditioning unit for the police station from Owens Companies at a cost not to exceed $63,100. 4F7 authorizes the release of a developer's agreement dated September 29, 1980 by and between the City of Shakopee, Burma High, Inc., and 3 other entities relating to 3.25 acres of land currently owned by Burma High Corporation. And 4F8 adopts a resolution authorizing city participation in the Minnesota Department of Public Safety's Towards Zero Deaths Traffic Enforcement Grant from October 1st, 2011 to September 30th, 2012.
Question.
Thanks, sir. Yes. Ms. Bunt?
I don't know if I heard you read 4A2.
Let me reread 4A2. Authorizes request of Chard Tiling and Excavating, Inc. for extending work hours on County Road 69 project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good catch. Any other discussions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 5, recognition of involved citizens by City Council. Is there anyone here tonight here to discuss an item that is not on our agenda? Yes, sir. Would you please sign in?
I did sign in.
There should be another speaker sign in up there someplace. Do we have that?
Actually, we're going to one now, so if he signed in, we're in good shape.
Efficiency, I love it. You're on. Just
All
tell
right.
us your name and address, please.
My name is John Snowden. I live at 1867 Foothill Trail over on the east side of Shakopee. I live in the new Mattamy home development over there. Just a couple issues tonight. first of all, I want to thank the council for taking my time. Foothill Trail today is not what it was 3 years ago when I moved in July of '09. There's been a astronomical amount of traffic going down that road. It's become a throughway from Crossings Boulevard to Eagle Creek Boulevard. Approximately right now, people habitating right now, living, I think, affected by what I'm going to get to is probably about 27 houses, and I gave Matt a signed petition today here before with 22 signatures regarding some sort of traffic control study. It's the speeds that people are using on that road are just, it's a speed limit of 30 miles an hour right now. The people that are going down that road are exceeding that well beyond 30. There's a mild curve in that road, and I'm on that mild curve. There's also a new crosswalk in there, which feeds into a new playground, and you know, I'm sure you're all familiar with that. I know there's a lot of people that don't. I've talked to a lot of these neighbors already in the past probably 2 weeks and more intensely than I ever have, but you know, they're more concerned about all these people that, you know, make this road their throughway. I thought, and I'm sure a lot of other people thought, once 21 opened up, that would alleviate a lot of this. And it has alleviated some of it. But the people that do not live in that neighborhood development, they know the speed limit. They know the speed limit. They've gone down every morning, every afternoon, rush hour, what have you. It's become almost a nuisance. Out of them, you know, there's 100 in that development now. I want to say there's between 100 and 110 new homes in the last 3 years, with an average of 2 kids in each household. So you can do the math on that. People that are using the crosswalk, especially to get to the park. I'm just trying to paint a picture here of what the future holds, and then not to mention the new development that Ryland just put in, that they're proposed to put in. That's just going to magnify the traffic going on that road. I'm here with, I don't have all the answers. A lot of people that signed that petition, they wanted stop signs and speed bumps, some sort of traffic control. I understand the speed bumps are probably a little over. That's, you know, after talking with Matt a little bit, it doesn't sound like that would be the most efficient way to go. But more signage on that road. I don't know if there has to be a study, another study done. I know one of my neighbors that lives down on the south end of Foothill, his name is Brad Woodward. Over a year ago, he didn't come to the city council the way I have today, but he did make a proposition to the, I don't know if there's a safety council for the city. And there was some added enforcement, and it was a temporary thing. I don't think that quite got the message across, because people, you know, it's a frustrating issue with me, and I know I'm here on behalf of everybody on that list that I gave Matt this evening, but I don't have the answers, but I would hope that the city council would initiate some sort of study, added enforcement, because the future of that road is, you know, me personally, I'd like to see additional signage. Right now, at that crosswalk.
Such as additional stop signs or more
That would be-
speed limit? What are you looking
Ideally, I would love to see a stop sign at that crosswalk.
for? Okay.
That'd be my personal, I mean, like that petition shows, everyone on there put stop signs, speed bumps. Well, I know what reality is and what reality isn't, but
Thank you.
that's ideally, right now at that crosswalk, you have a bright neon yellow orange triangular sign indicating there is a crosswalk there. it's not, to me, it's not doing anything. I've got a bird's eye view to that crosswalk right now. And the people that come around the bend, the line of sight from where I am, and when they come around that bend, I can't tell you how many people just, I mean, they come literally within 4 feet of my curb line because
Alright.
they're hugging the curb line. And my driveway is right at that curve. It's like you're on a racetrack. And my driveway, my apron is right there. And I'm not the only one. I listen to all these guys when I went door to door. I mean, these people backing out of their driveways, they're young kids. They're in a hurry. I'm sure everybody's in a hurry.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Snowden. I
right.
appreciate you coming here tonight. I really appreciate you coming. What we'll do is from here, Mr. McNeil will get in touch with you as to what we can do and what needs to be done from here on out and what's been done in the past, and relook at that because I know this has been at least looked at before, and so we can reopen that and look and see if there are any new ideas and see where we can go with it, if anything. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you can retrieve the study on it that was done, I believe there was, that'd be great. I'd love to hear some feedback.
thank you. I appreciate you coming here tonight.
Thanks.
Oh, Councilor Lehman.
Mary, Mr. Snowden gave me a call, and I don't really have a whole lot of answers for him because I haven't seen the development that he's referring to. And short notice, I basically told him, the only information I have is what I'm getting from him. And, if he wanted to come down and make the case to the city council, that's fine. It's probably better that the citizens do it than I do it. They probably have more information at this point. And I saw the petition when I walked in the council chambers. It's not something I saw earlier. I knew he was talking about it, and that's fine. This actually goes to the city clerk. And I would like to make a motion to direct staff, the Transportation Safety Committee that we have currently, to take a look at that area, and including how and if the future development will have an impact, and then direct the police department to add a little enforcement out there to see if there's really speeding going on, and if there is, to get them slowed down. The issue that was brought to my attention that concerned me was if there's really that many kids in the area.
Do you want to have a second for your motion before we start discussing?
Sure.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Lehman, can you restate the motion?
To direct the staff to, which is our safety,
Traffic Safety Review Committee.
Safety Committee, to take a look at this area and these concerns, and also direct the chief of police to put a little bit of enforcement in that area to see what kind of speeding issues we have.
Do we have a second? Anyone? This is just for discussion.
I'll second it for discussion.
Seconded by Councilor Whiting.
And if there's a lot of kids in the area, I think there's a park out there too.
Under construction at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And I don't know how many kids are there. But if there is, I don't know if it's a prime candidate, and this is probably for the safety committee to look at, but caution children at play type signs or something. I don't know. There's some
Alright.
comments that I have.
The reason I wasn't jumping in to second the motion originally was that I was kind of hoping to give Mr. McNeil a chance to sit down with staff, which I'm sure would include our engineer as well as police chief, and take a look at it and come back to us with more than just one or two options, just kind of give us an overview of what's happening, what they see might be some ways of dealing with the issues, and then make, a more concrete motion as to what we would like to see done.
Mr. Mayor? I think the appropriate thing would be to refer to the Traffic Safety Review Committee. That is made up of members of the Police Department, the Public Works and Engineering staff. We also have a consulting engineer and myself that look at the specific situations. We will have traffic counts and accident histories and things such as that to help guide on that. But it would then be a recommendation to you as far as any follow-up from that. There would also be an appropriate time to just direct the police department to do some concentrated enforcement in the short term.
Councilor Lehman?
after thinking about this for a couple of days, the one thing that kind of crossed my mind was, how do we know if the chronic speeders, if you will, are from the neighborhood by Crossings and 18, or if they're from outside? If they're from that neighborhood, it's pretty easy to address the issue, I would think. If it's from the outside, people, I don't know, Minneapolis or whatever town they come from, using the quick trip and finding a back road or something, a little more difficult. From my standpoint, I'm looking at, how do you fix it? And the only way to know that is to pull over some speeders and find out where they're from.
What difference is it going to make where they're from? I don't understand.
Well, if it's from within, I think it's a lot easier to educate folks of the proper way to go.
So residents from Shakopee are less likely to speed than residents from Prior Lake?
No, but if you move the ending up on Crossing before Foothill, that option goes away.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor to refer it to Safety Council and increase police enforcement. Do we have any more discussion? Councilor Whiting?
Would it be appropriate to maybe take half of your motion and just refer it to the safety, Transportation Safety Committee now, and then put the police enforcement on after that return?
So that's a friendly amendment.
I would like to add that as a friendly
I can
amendment.
accept that.
Okay. All right. So do I have any additional discussion? Councilor Punt?
I guess just, that was my hesitation as well, as directing police. I'm happy to refer it to the Traffic Safety Committee, so.
All right.
Which includes the police.
Right, right.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you much, Mr. Snowden. Item number 6, public hearing on Valley View Road project from Evergreen Lane to Saracen Street. I need a motion to open up a public hearing, please.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Anyone opposed? We are in a public hearing. Mr. Loney.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, members of the audience. This is a project that council authorized previously for us to study. It's Valley View Road, and I'll be using the mouse here to identify, but it's from Evergreen Lane on the west side all the way through County Road 17 to Saracen Street. I'd like to go through a presentation here of how we got to the project and the project costs and assessments and council actions that we would like to request. First of all, this project was initiated by the council. It was due to the County Road 17 reconstruction project, which is underway under design and proposed to be constructed in 2013. You accepted, you ordered the report on October 4th, 2011. You adopted it on March 20th, established a public hearing for tonight. County Road 17 layout is a 4-laning of 17 from St. Francis Avenue approximately to a quarter mile south to 78, and reconstruction of 78 from Barrington Drive all the way to 17. Valley View Road fits into there, running across. In this area, this symbol here is showing a new traffic control signal connecting a city collector, Saracen Street, to Evergreen Lane. A little history here. Back in 2000, we did a traffic study on Valley View Road. We just looked at several alternatives to see what the future would be, how we would make the connection to 17. The existing Valley View Road would not be acceptable in the future. We found a preferred alignment after meeting with neighbors in that area, mainly the area of Valley View Road, east of Saracen, and Beta Seed and the hospital and other areas. We did neighborhood meetings. From that, we ended up with a preferred alignment. We ended up with a memo of understanding between the city and county. Beta Seed also did enter into a land swap, that should be, in dedication on a project alignment for the future roadway. This is just a title sheet of that study. The study area went from County Road 79 to County Road 83. memo of understanding here, which talked about the east-west collector street, mainly the east leg from County Road 17 to Saracen Street. St. Francis Avenue, did discuss there at the time what could happen to that access. It would be modified at that point. In County Road 17, we'll be disconnecting the existing Valley View Road from 17 as part of that. This is the preferred alignment. Phase 1 was to curve the road of Saracen Street to Valley View Road. And Phase 2 now is here to connect this Valley View Road over across here. This Valley View Road, the existing Valley Road, will be disconnected and cul-de-sac. This is a concept drawing that Beta Seed came up with, which their goal was to have an even land dedication and land swap between them and the hospital, because the property line was right here between them, and the road would have to curve in order to meet this intersection to the future intersection proposed. One other issue that surfaced later on as we were doing the County Road 17 corridor study was the neighborhood east of Saracen Street on Moores Avenue was found out about the increased traffic, and many of those neighbors were not around in 2000, and so we did a study in that to see what the traffic impacts would be to that residential neighborhood. From that study and from those meetings, we came back with a recommendation to have a one-way roadway, which would be you could go out on Moores Avenue westbound, but you can't go eastbound from Saracen Street. And council did approve that on October 21, 2008. Next action, the council approved a resolution, 6891, approving the County Road 17 corridor study, and the vision for this corridor study that it will be a principal arterial, which is the highest classification of all road systems in the state of Minnesota, because 17 will, from Trunk Highway 169 will go all the way down to the southern boundary of Scott County and will be a major roadway. This was approved in April 7, 2009. So with that background, then we started doing the feasibility report, looking at, because of the reconstruction of County Road 17, beginning in 2013, Scott County also was proposing to close the access at St. Francis Avenue, and with Beta Seed and also other driveways off of 17. So we met with staff, we met with Beta Seed and Hospital to determine acceptable alignment. We started those discussions. During the preparation of the feasibility study and then afterwards, because during it there was some issue whether or not we would even build the west side. Later on, through talking through the county project and the city project, it came about that we should do at least the Beta Seed, and they're here to represent themselves, their interest in moving forward. The proposed, we did separate this in the improvements east of 17 and west of 17 because there's different factors. And this will, Valley View Road will provide some traffic relief to 17th Avenue. That's what our traffic studies have indicated. Proposed roadway is essentially a 44-foot wide roadway with left and right turn lanes at the intersection of 17, and the reason for that is to line up the signal and better operation of the signal there that we are expecting from Scott County when they four-lane County Road 17. And also we'll be looking at limiting the access to Moores Avenue, as mentioned before, a westbound out and no eastbound into Moores Avenue. Storm sewer will be meeting state aid requirements, and we're going to be building the storm sewer system that the county can use for County Road 17. They'll also be building a pond on the Beta Seed parcel on the west leg of Valley View Road, and we have estimated cost of storm sewer improvements that are oversizing costs due to a state aid road of $216,000 on the east side, and on the west side $141,000. We also would be building an 8-foot wide trail on the north side along the whole project area, and those costs are shown there, $38,000 on the east side and $28,000 on the west side. The east side is a little bit longer than the west side, so that's why you'll see some of these costs a little higher. The other thing is we're not going to build a sidewalk, not proposing a sidewalk on the south side at this time because that's in the research property of Beta Seed, and that would be put in at a later date when that property develops. Easements, the right-of-way on the east side, we're expected to be dedicated to the city from past agreements we've had, and we'll show you that an alignment in the property being proposed to be dedicated. And then we'll be purchasing land on the west side. We estimate 1.8 acres of land there and about 180,000. Some of the improvements here, there'll be a water main extended all the way through. This water main on County Road 17 extended down to be part of the County Road 17 project. We're just showing water main here, and there'll be connections to Moores and Evergreen. Sanitary sewers in green here. We can extend the sewer that stops at Evergreen, bring it forth. That could be stubs put out for future development and also to properties along Valley View Road. There's 2 parcels besides the Beta Seed parcel. The Beta Seed is on this big parcel of land. Their offices are over here on the north end of the page, and they also own all this land on the south side. There's 2 parcels in here that are adjacent to future Valley View. And then there'll be a sewer extended along this side to serve future development of the hospital and Beta Seed. The assessments, we're looking at assessing a local street equivalent, 36-foot road. Anything above that would be picked up by the city and state aid funds. The cost of sanitary sewer would be assessed to the benefiting properties. The cost of an 8-inch water main would be assessed to the benefiting properties, with oversizing being picked up by Shakopee Public Utilities. Storm sewer, we're proposing to assess just a local storm sewer. All the oversizing and extra catch basins and extra size pipes would be picked up at our state aid fund. These are the costs on the east side. You see the assessments. City cost is $260,000. Storm would be $122,000. Shakopee Public Utilities $40,000. Total project about $964,000. On the west side, the assessments is $559,000. State aid $195,000. Storm is $78,000. Shakopee Public Utilities $31,000. For a cost of $865,000. Some of the issues, summarize them here so we can talk about them. The alignment and design of Valley View Road to balance the right-of-way from Beta Seed and the hospital. The road connection of Valley View to St. Francis Avenue, as the hospital will be losing its access when St. Francis is closed. City participation and right-of-way dedication at no cost to the city. This is the alignment that we've pretty much have come to an agreement on. It pretty much matches the right-of-way dedication for both parcels of the hospital. And again, this line right here is the property line between the hospital and Beta Seed. By curving the road, there'll be a swap between Beta Seed and the hospital in yellow, Beta Seed in blue, hospital in red would be dedicating that as part of the project. This leg from Valley View to St. Francis Avenue, we have had conversation with the county, and I believe the hospital can talk about this too, but the hospital has agreed to pick up this connection cost. And they'll do that as part of their project with County Road 17. So there'll have to be quite a bit of coordination between our project, the county project, to make everything work. A letter was sent in. I included that in your packet. The most of these items, we'll work through those. The undergrounding of power lines, that's basically not in the project area, but it's near the intersection of 17 and 17th Avenue. That would really help facilitate safety of helicopters and bringing emergency patients in. So that's something that they're going to make a request to SPUC and would like city support. A right turn lane for their emergency access, that's being designed now. Signal, we're pushing the county to make sure that happens. That's in their plans right now, and we think it will be approved. The renaming of Valley View Road, a portion of that to St. Francis Avenue, is problematic. I don't know how we'll do that yet. I guess that'll have to be something that staff will have to sit down and see how we could accomplish that or when. And maintaining access during construction, obviously important, and reasonable design land swap, which I showed you as a balanced alignment for both Beta Seed and the hospital. The west leg now, the issues there are high assessments to adjacent parcels. the smaller parcels, and even Beta Seed. We have a support letter of Beta Seed with conditions, which really reflects a future street layout, which we'll talk about, and the relocation of driveways from 17 to Valley View. Here is the best drawing that we have right now, working with the county. The county will be meeting with these property owners. They're going to be obtaining right-of-way from Beta Seed and the Halesteck and Thompson parcel, and they'll be talking to them about relocating those driveways. That's something that the county will be doing. Right now, this location we're showing right here would be where Beta Seed driveway would be extended and coming back out. We show a shared driveway here now, but we will need to sit down with the property owners and see how we can best accomplish their driveway needs of those parcels. But that's going to be a negotiation between the city and the county staff on how that's going to work. The Beta Seed sent us a letter with their conditions. Most of these conditions we're going to be able to meet. We are meeting or will meet. Access that they want to have in support of the project. We're working on that already. The old Valley View Road, they have an access off of there. They want to maintain that for their field access. We don't see any issue with that. And their irrigation is very important to them. We got to make sure that working with the county, that does not get disrupted. And the final engineering drawings to incorporate the Beta Seed concept probably cannot be done at this time because we're building a pond and also it doesn't have a plat approval. We've talked to Beta Seed reps on that, and we'll be able to work with them, but they have to understand that without a plat in hand, it's tough to guarantee those future street accesses. This is their drawing that they sent in with the letter showing the connection coming along here and into their business. Okay, the assessment numbers we included. There's 4 parcels that are really being affected here. Beta Seed has land on both sides, so that's why there's 5 listed here. The east side, they're splitting the assessment 50-50, $270,000. On the west side, Beta Seed has $399,000. Thompson parcel, $94,000 and $65,000 for the Hayestack property. We as staff, in our memo we wrote to you, believe that would have difficulty proving benefit. We would recommend a benefit appraisal for the Thompson and Hayestack parcels to really see what is the actual benefit there before we do an assessment hearing. So with that, I think that concludes my presentation, but when you're done, the actions for you to consider are adopting a resolution and ordering the project moving forward or not, and for us to prepare plans and specifications, and also to authorize us to obtain benefit appraisals for certain parcels. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Anyone up here have questions for Mr. Loney? Mr. Lehman?
Does any of the properties currently in this affected area not have city sewer and water?
None of them have sewer and water.
Okay. And will they be forced into city sewer and water if their current well and septic systems are operational, or will that be deferred until a time when they want to hook up?
Well, there's a couple options here.
Okay.
If we go with city code and we put sewer and water in, city code says within 3 years you have to hook up if sewer is available to you. The other option is if we do some kind of an agreement, assessment agreement, which we did on Valley View Road further to the east, to say that you don't have to hook up at this time, but when you do hook up, then the assessment becomes due. That's an agreement that we'd have to work out. We can set the conditions of how that hookup happens. That's something Mr. Thompson and I have talked about, something for us to look at in this situation. Once we get a benefit appraisal done, we need to sit down and see where we're at. Current city code would be within 3 years after sewer and water is available.
Second question.
Councilor Lehman?
Somehow we're going to have to make sure there's access to St. Francis throughout the throughout any construction process. And it looks like it's gonna be off the new Valley View and then turning back north.
During the project, and this, I don't know if this show up, it's pretty small, but before St. Francis is cut off, this Valley View Road and this north-south connection road will have to be in place.
Okay, and then
I mean, unless we do some other agreement with the hospital, but, I mean, we do have other roads, but this is an important connection. That's how I see it. We'll have to work with the county. We also have Saracen Street and 17th Avenue here, if need be, but that places a pretty good burden on a lot of people that use County Road 17 and St. Francis Avenue. But those are things to be determined during the construction
Okay.
phase.
And I assume signage would have to be changed around to let people know how to get there.
We'll be working with the hospital on that.
Any other questions from Mr. Loney this time? All right, now we'll hear from residents and folks who would like to speak. Come on up, please.
Hi, Rochelle Heistack, 1830 Marshall.
Hi, Rochelle.
Got quite a few concerns. I've actually typed a letter to make sure that I didn't leave anything out. You talked about the assessment options, about the city code 3-year option and the assessment agreement option also. And I'm wondering too, he mentioned those two, but what about just no assessment option at all? I mean, could we just be left on city, on our own well and septic? Could that be something that could be considered and we wouldn't be assessed anything whatsoever?
These are all things that we'll
Right, so
we'll-
I'm throwing
we'll
it out
discuss.
as an
Thank
option.
you.
Okay, and the other concerns that I have, the city had submitted an assessment fee for the sewer and water on our property totaling the amount of $65,000. We feel that this amount is extremely excessive due to the fact that our current septic and well are fully functional and they're posing no problems at all at the time. The cost also seems high when compared to the value of the service it will provide. Again, we have no need for it at this time. So to us, it's just an added payment assessment that we're going to be $65,000 onto our payments. So we are requesting a benefits appraisal to assess the issue. If we even, I would prefer to have the no assessment option. Second, we have concerns about how close the proposed highway will be to the house and the legalities this poses. According to Scott County, the house doesn't meet the minimum setback requirements from the highway. I personally have very big concerns about traffic noise and potential marketability of the property if we should ever choose to sell. The county will be forcing us to relocate our driveway to the south side of our property due to the fact that our current driveway on Marshall Road would be closed with the new construction project. Again, future marketability could pose a very large problem because of the strange location of the driveway on the south side of the property. I personally would never choose to purchase a property with such an odd entrance location. That's true. That for me as a property owner, I would never even choose a location like that. So I feel like if that's something that we're going to be forced as an option, I would like to be compensated for the aesthetic abnormality that poses to us as current homeowners and to the future ability to ask and receive a fair selling price.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes.
When you said about the setback, do you mean the setback from the new Valley View or the setback from Marshall as it exists right now?
If you actually look at the map, the tree line, it goes further up into like our actual property. And we were, my husband had mentioned it to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's this one here.
Thank you.
I mean, it's very close to the front of our house where this is going to go in with the bike trail. Another thing, I mean, to me, of throwing this out there as opposed to elimination of that 8-foot trail on the north side of County Road 17, this would preserve the land in front of our property. I mean, is the 8-foot trail something that absolutely has to go in? Something to consider. Could it go on the south side?
Okay.
Okay. And that would give us much more space in the front of our property. Third, we run a business out of our house. My husband's a chiropractor, sells Shakopee Chiropractic. We have concerns about the visibility of the signage and how this could potentially impact our business. Our entrance to the property is on a highway, major county road, high visibility. Push back behind a bike path, we will lose the impact and potential business for our clinic. Okay. That's very high concern for us. And this probably has nothing to do with you, but I'm throwing it out. The county has proposed a substantial, of taking that substantial piece of property from the front of our house. And on our last tax assessment, the estimated market value of the property has gone down from last year to this year. And we would like to have an appraisal to get a true assessment on the current market value of the property before any calculations would be made for proceeds due to us from the loss of the property to the county.
Could you do me a favor and point to where your house is on the map that's just to your left?
We are,
Under the,
I'm sorry.
okay, you're there. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Ms. Heisteck.
Yeah, I want to just add a few things.
All right, come on up.
Well, if the county has to go through and
Could you introduce yourself for everybody?
Donovan Heisteck, 1830 Marshall Road.
Thank you.
If the county goes through and does do what they plan to do with Marshall Road or County Road 17, and we do have to come in from the south, there's some huge elevation issues with our properties. So not only would we be coming in from the south, we would be going up a pretty huge incline, which is going to cause a significant problem in the wintertime. That whole area where the road is probably drops 10 to 12 feet from where the intersection would be. So you're looking at hauling in a lot of fill to make that road correct, and I don't know if the city is aware of that, and that's all.
Yeah, we're aware of it.
All right, and just
We have to raise the road up.
all right. I guess some other concerns about having, to pay so much for this is I have a concern on the northern Beta Seed property that's probably being planned. I would speculate that there's probably developers already looking at that. I've lived here since 1996. Beta Seed uses all this really nice dark black soil down in the valley, and they rent the upper ground out to local farmers for hay, most season, or oats, crops like that. Beta Seed doesn't really get a benefit out of that. When we first moved here, I checked on the Beta Seed property, and they were leasing the land from the Patterson family, which they're no longer doing. When we checked, they had like 43 years left on a 50-year lease. Well, now I look on there, and Beta Seed's name is on the title, but their mortgage or lender is called Associated Capital Corporation. I know that these are local people, developers, and they own a significant amount of other property in our area that's been developed and will be developed. So, my theory is that that land north and west of me will be developed soon, and that a huge part of the reason for this road going in is to benefit that new development. So they'll have a nice road coming down to the south so they can get on, which is fine. But if you have to assess people, just don't do a couple people that just happen to be in the way right now because there's some other plan going on. And so that's a concern. Just wanted to get that out right now in case that is what happens. And it's interesting, the huge drainage pond that they're putting in and stuff. It really looks like it is being set up for a residential development there. I guess those are my concerns, I guess. And then, of course,
Thank you.
the property value issues. But
All right. One quick one. If you
Yeah,
could,
this is
please.
quick too. Could I look at the map? You had that, the connection from Beta Seed, how they went behind our property, and then it looked like it did kind of a zig. That actually would be completely visible from our living room. I mean, if the road,
Well, that's not on your property, is it?
oh, I know, but
I
it's,
know, I can't do anything to help you out there.
well, I mean, could a road be looked at as a different, I mean, if it went from the back and their road went in the backside?
That's not our,
It's essentially a driveway.
right.
Yeah. See how, I mean, this road, I mean, what would prevent them from just going all the way in and back? Do you see, I'm just
I see
curious.
what you're saying, yep.
I mean, if it would be something that we could,
Further away, push it further away from your
well,
property.
I mean, this is our property, I mean, it's gonna be right, I mean, I'm just saying, what would prevent them from just moving the road all the way up and over, back from a back, a little bit further?
Yeah, it's something to
It'd
think about.
eliminate a lot of traffic. We're gonna have the, right,
All right,
headlights in our window and,
got it.
okay.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to speak?
I'm Kevin Thompson, 1834 Marshall Road. And I basically just wanted to have it on record that I got pretty much the same feeling as they have on this whole deal, especially assessments. It's just out of line for what they figure my benefit would be. That's about all I have to say on it.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
I'm Linda Thompson, 1834 Marshall Road. Is it the property you guys want that you tax us with this outrageous assessment? $95,000 for something I don't even want? Buy my house? I mean, I realize in the back of us is some pretty expensive houses, and I realize in the future, it looks like you're probably going to build this all up, and we're not going to fit. So it's best to get us out. Is that what it is? Is that our whole goal here? Is to ask us to leave by assessing us with that kind of money? Our house isn't worth the money the assessment's going through. It's like, that's not what we agree upon. I mean, this assessment is outrageous. I've never heard of anything so high.
Have discussions been had with you, I assume, about how the process works and what happens and how much can be assessed and those kinds of things? Mr. Loney, you want to talk about that a little bit? About how that number came about, just so everybody knows, and what happens there?
Yeah, it's, again, it's our assessment policy, and I did meet with Mr. Thompson, explained that they have a very long lot this way, and on the front footage basis, that's what the number comes out. We also recognize, and I think, I mean, I'm not going too far out of the way of stretching to say that I think we'd have difficulty proving $95,000. So that's why I recommend a benefit appraisal. What is the actual benefit to the parcel that an appraiser would look at and say, okay, this is what I see as benefit of these improvements.
And it can only be assessed up to the benefit amount.
Right. That's the way the law is written, that we cannot assess more than what the benefit is received.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Kurt Wickstrom, and I'm president of Beta Seed Inc., located at 1788 Marshall Road. Yeah, generally speaking, we support the project as proposed by Mr. Loney and staff. With regards to some of the concerns of our neighbors, Beta Seed has been in the Shakopee community for more than 30 years. And our fundamental business is research and seed breeding. And so we have no intention of developing the land to the south of Valley View Road or to the north. For the Heistecks and Thompsons, we can never predict what's going to happen 10 or 15 years from now, but we're a research and breeding company. That land has more value to us in its current state than it does with houses on it. So we want to address those concerns that the Heistecks brought forward. But we support the proposal as recommended by Mr. Loney. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Mike Baumgartner, President, St. Francis Hospital, 1455 St. Francis Avenue. Also, we support the project. On the letter that I sent to the mayor, I want one correction for the record. Our support, I wrote in the letter, the west side of County Road. It actually is the east side, so please accept my apologies, make that correction. And all the 7 items were listed out. One thing I did do this evening, though, I did take a look at St. Francis Avenue. It is important for us to maintain that name of St. Francis Avenue for the new Valley View Road. And I went all the way from Valley View Road from Saracen back up to 17th Avenue. And there is not a home on 17th Avenue or on Valley View Road that would have that address. The only thing would be the park at the corner of 17th Avenue and Valley View Road. If you know where I'm speaking, County Road 16. That park, that hockey rink faces the street. So I guess Parks and Rec, that would be listed as Valley View Road address, but all the homes on that street don't take the Valley View Road as their address. So it could be a simple thing to continue the name of St. Francis Avenue or just continue it in front of St. Francis. That might be a little more complicated, but you could take that whole avenue, Valley View Road today, and then change that to St. Francis Avenue. So asking for your consideration. Another thing that's also very important, there's a couple items to take a few minutes here, is the power lines. There are some of the power lines on the east side of County Road 17. There's also some power lines above ground on the west side of County Road 17 across the street from St. Francis. Very important for us to get those buried at this time as the hospital continues to expand, the impact that it has on our helipad. I do like the opportunity for a traffic signal to be placed there, so I think that's going to be very important for our patients, visitors, and families and employees as they come to St. Francis. And I think also, as mentioned, is the access during the project is going to be key for the hospital. Losing St. Francis Avenue and that access that we have today, both north and southbound, I think northbound is going to be pretty easy to fix. Southbound could be difficult, and how to maintain that and quick access for the emergency vehicles, especially coming to St. Francis. So some of the key things. And the final comment is St. Francis Avenue as it is today. It's going to be vacated or at some point, and we're asking until we actually vacate that street and plow it up and put parking lots or new medical office buildings on it as it is of today. We're asking for the city to maintain that for us, that east-west section of St. Francis Avenue. And that's listed one of the 7 items too. Any questions for me?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Not at the time. Thank you, sir. All right, first, Mr. Loney, can you address a couple of the questions from the residents for me, please?
Sure.
First off from Ms. Hyestek. Am I saying that correct? Hyestek? Okay. The fact that they would like to be not assessed because it's on city well and septic, is that a council decision, or how does that work? Because I'm new to this process.
Well, okay, do my best to explain this. The city does have, when you do improvements, one of the functions, and we have an assessment policy, is to assess benefiting properties. It could be that we do a benefit appraisal and they say there's no benefit. It would be pretty tough for the council to say, well, we're going to assess you anyway after you get a benefit appraisal.
Do you need direction from us tonight to say do a benefit appraisal? Is that?
That's one of the actions I asked for at the very end. So that's what we're suggesting. I would also don't want to leave anybody in the dark here or thinking something else, but the reality is there's going to be some benefit there. Now, is that benefit in the future when their well and septic goes out? Yes, could be. But there will be some benefit.
Okay.
What that is remains to be determined.
All right. That answers 2 of the questions.
And one other point, the Hayestech property is 3.25 acres, so there's some pretty good land value there.
Okay.
So, and today, the way they use the land today, probably not a lot of benefit because they're not going to use the sewer, they're not going to use the water. They already had a driveway, it's going to be relocated. But in the future, there is potential there.
Okay. Thank you. And then the configuration of the trail and where the right-of-way goes, that is fairly well set at this point. Is that correct?
That's
Is
pretty,
it-
we have pretty much, you know, working with the county and trying to jockey the right-of-way needs of the hospital and Beta Seed, we have pretty much blocked in that this is the location. Carrying this through, we're gonna need a little bit of right-of-way from the Thompson parcel, and it lines up pretty close on the property line between Beta Seed and the Hayestack parcel.
Okay.
There might be the need, as Mr. Hayestack pointed out, there is quite a bit of drop. It's a pretty good drop on his land down to the current Beta Seed driveway. It's a private little road. But looking at it, when we get in design, we're gonna have to look at grading, and then how we tie into these properties. But that's something that's a final design question, but he does raise a good concern there.
Okay. Any other questions from council members? Councilor Lehman.
Mr. Loney, since there's only 2 properties really affected by the assessments, residential properties, I guess it would have been a cleaner process maybe if we had the benefit assessments done ahead of time and preliminary negotiations to figure out, you know, what the project cost is really going to be.
It would have been, probably could have, it would have been a better process, but the appraisers that we've been talking to were pretty well booked up. It's going to take a good 12 weeks or so or more to get something, and moving this project forward or not is really the question. We will have an assessment hearing later on. We'll have that benefit appraisal before that, and we'll be able to address those questions. This project would not be built until 2013. The assessment hearing we would have in 2013. Mr. Thompson wants to say anything?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, maybe I can shed a little light on that. The normal process, if you want to call it that, does not involve getting appraisals in most of these public improvement projects. This one is somewhat unique because of the high assessments on these 2 properties. That's an issue, the assessment is an issue that's going to come back before you in another public hearing, and we'll certainly have the appraisal done by that time, and then you'll make a decision as to how to allocate the assessment. So I want to let the property owners know that are affected that this is an extra step that the city is taking on this one because of the large amount of the assessments. But typically, when we have done that in the past, it's been after you award the project, because there's no sense having an appraisal done if you're not going to go forward with the project, and have it done between now and the assessment hearing. So it is typically when we've done it in the past, when we've had to do that.
All right. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to add a couple of things. The assessment issue is separate than the right-of-way issue. There's 2 appraisals going on here. The county and us will be doing appraisals on land takings for the projects, and then we'll also be doing what's the benefit appraisal for the assessment. What is the actual value to the land? We've done this before in a previous project. We would probably get the benefit appraisal and look at it and probably bring that back to council before the assessment hearing to see if we want to enter into an assessment agreement. If we could get that entered into before we even have the assessment. So we would be bringing that back at a later date.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just turning my volume off here so it's not making noises on me. I apologize. Councilor Lehman.
I was looking at it from a different perspective. We're supposed to decide on a project that has a set cost to it, and we really don't know that cost because we don't know what the benefit is, what the assessment is, what the legal aspects are, and legal costs, and so on and so forth. So I don't know that cost estimate is accurate because we don't know all these factors. So,
we do know. I mean, our project is an estimate. The whole project, we estimate the cost. Now, we're also saying that we know what the costs are of the 2 parcels that are subject to possible assessment reductions.
Mayor, but your projections are taking into consideration the assessment charges as presented to these parcels.
That is correct.
So if that's not a true assessment, which we don't know that yet, but I could probably sit here and run some hypotheticals with you, probably some scary scenarios, and I guess I don't want to be going down that road blindly. You know, I suppose theoretically they could condemn these properties, take the properties by force for a road improvement, give them low market value rate of what today is, because housing values are low right now. Which would be a worst case scenario.
You can't do that.
We're not looking at that, so I don't even know why that's an option.
But theoretically it could happen.
If you want to run a road right through there and take out the property, you could.
So let's stick with what we're actually talking about tonight. Mr. McNeil?
I think what Bruce was talking about is that if we do the benefit appraisal and it's less than what the estimated cost is, then staff will have to come up with a recommendation as to how to cover that difference. I think your question tonight is this a beneficial project? Is it something that you want to see go ahead?
Mitch Rasmussen, the county engineer, wants to explain the right-of-way process a little bit that the county's doing. I think that'd be important.
Mitch Rasmussen, Scott County Engineer. Mayor and Council, I heard a couple of questions that I thought I could probably at least add some light on. The right-of-way valuation part of the project, we get into the design and into final design, and then we'll determine what impacts we have with the project on the properties. It doesn't have anything to do with the assessment. It has to do with the acquisition of the property for the project. The way our process works on that, we do have an appraisal done on that property. There's really two components of the appraisal. It's the determination of the land value that we're actually acquiring, and the value is not based on the current property estimate. It's based on the highest and best use of that property. So its current value today really doesn't come into account, because the highest and best use is, and Mr. Leek could probably speak to how the land is guided, but that's what drives the value of the land. And so the part of the offer will be the pure cost of the land in its highest and best use. The second component of the offer will be the change in valuation based on damages to the project. So things like how close the road gets to the house, if it takes a property that met setback requirements, and after the project the setback requirements are not met, those types of things are damages, and those are added on to the value of the land for the taking or the acquisition. And the other item I wanted to talk about was the trail. It is county policy to have trails on both sides of county roads. Engineer Loney would probably speak to at least 2 or 3 locations within the county where we have received requests from the city to fill in gaps in the trail network in the city, and whenever you have to come in behind and try to fill in a gap, the right-of-way isn't generally sufficient, so you have to buy a small parcel of land. You're doing construction on a smaller project, which drives costs up. So really the right time to put the trails in are when you're making the big improvement in the corridor. So thank you.
All right, any additional questions from council? Mr. Whiting?
Just a quick question to try and alleviate some of the Thompson's concerns. How is that west of 17 zoned in this area?
Well, let Michael Leek talk to that.
Okay.
Councilors, Mayor, there are actually 2 questions, I think, here. The first is, how is it currently zoned, and how is it guided? And I'll answer the second question first. These 2 properties have been guided for single-family residential use in the comprehensive plan since 1996, when the 95 comp plan was adopted. So it's been guided for single-family density development, which is 3 units per acre. So when Engineer Rasmussen talks about highest and best use for their valuation, that refers to that kind of use on that property, rather than the valuation for its use currently as essentially rural residential style residential. Both properties are zoned agricultural preservation. Both properties are non-conforming currently with respect to lot size. You'll remember that in the ag preservation zone, we have a 40-acre lot minimum. Both of these properties were platted before that was the case, and so they are smaller than that. In general terms, Minnesota statute ultimately requires that the zoning match up to the comp plan. But the city, over the years that I've been here at least, has had a policy of not forcing zoning changes until land is ripe for development and either the current property owner or a purchaser proposes development of those properties. So they still retain their ag preservation zoning, but they've been guided for at least 16 years for single-family residential development.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? All right.
Just a minute, you should close the public hearing if.
Oh, thank you.
And just one other comment for me, that since this was a council-initiated project, to order the project, you need a supermajority. That's just, Mr. Thompson reminded me of that. So.
Thank you.
Which means 4 out of 5.
All right, any, Councilor Whiting?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Mr. Whiting, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, public meeting is closed. All right, discussion, Councilor Clay.
Offer Resolution 7189, a resolution ordering an improvement and preparation of plans and specifications for the Valley View Road Improvements Project number 2012-7 and move its adoption, and to authorize staff to obtain benefit appraisals for the 2 residential properties in this project.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilor Whiting. Discussion, Councilor Lehman.
I don't suppose we can break them up so I can vote for one and not the other. I'd like to see the benefit analysis first and have some of the issues worked out ahead of time.
Mr. Thompson?
It'd be appropriate to split them up if Councilman wants that. Divide the question into 2. Mr. Miller, if you make that motion, someone needs to second it and pass that. Split the question.
There's already a motion on the table.
No, this is a motion to split the question that's on the table. So if you make that and get it seconded and it passed, then they'll vote on each one separately.
All right. I'll make that motion to split the question.
And we're splitting it so that it would be reading how?
The first portion of the motion would be to order the improvement. The second portion of the motion would be to obtain the benefit appraisals. It would be 2 separate motions.
Do we have a second for Councilor?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Punt. So then do we, I'm sorry, this.
We vote on this.
All right.
Vote on the question of whether you're going to split the question.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any discussion on that? Motion on the floor. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All right. Does not pass 2-3. So we have the original motion on the floor for the recommended action. Discussion.
Was it seconded?
It was. Councilor Punt?
I just have one other question of clarification for Mr. Loney. So the benefit appraisals estimated time frame, you mentioned that the appraisers are currently quite busy. So
The one that we normally use is quite busy. Didn't think he could get to this project, so we're going to have to look for another one that could do the job. But I think we could have one back here, I want to say within 12 weeks, approximately. But again, this project is 2013. We'd be designing it, going through the design. We can do the benefit appraisal during that time frame, bring that information back when we get it. And then we still would have an assessment hearing in 2013. So there's plenty of time to get this done.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Councilor Clay?
Just a comment that the reason I didn't want, I'm not in favor of splitting them is that you almost need to have this project, the plans and specifications done and finished before you get a final, benefit appraisal done, so that the appraiser knows exactly how many feet of right-of-way or what's exactly going to happen. So it's going to be difficult to really do a good benefits appraisal first before the final plans and specifications are set.
Right.
You can't appraise what you don't know what you're
Yeah.
appraising. Yeah.
We
Any other discussion?
guesstimate, basically.
Councilor Lehman.
Yeah. You know, I don't doubt that it's, Marshall Road has to get fixed at some point. You know, and it's not to force development into these areas. It's to force the traffic jam that we have on 169 and Marshall Road and other traffic jams to be dispersed. You know, we really don't have to force development. Shakopee's been growing pretty fast all by itself for the last 10, 15 years. However, that being said, when we have a project that we know that, and we don't do many projects like this that have very few parcels with huge assessment impacts. I think our process could be improved upon, absolutely. I think we should be doing these benefit analysis up front, and I think we should be bringing forward a much cleaner process and a much cleaner proposal saying, you know, we've kind of done these things, preliminary numbers, we've talked with these couple of households, we've got some of these issues hammered out. It would be a lot easier, and it, you know, granted, it wouldn't happen very often because we don't have very many projects that are this complicated with them kind of issues. But I don't think the one-size-fits-all works in this case.
And are you saying that in benefit to the residents who are here tonight for better understanding what their assessment will be?
For all
Or are you
involved.
saying
For
so
all.
we know what the cost of the project
Yep,
is?
Yep, for both the city council and the citizens too, residents.
That's Whiting?
I agree with Councilor Lehman on the fact that this is something, the benefits appraisal should be upfront. I think it's a large assessment that seems way out of whack. In comparison to the project, maybe not, but I think after the benefits appraisal, we'll have a better knowledge of where we can go forward with this. This is a road that is going to be a major artery in our county, and so some of the roads and driveways on there are going to be a concern. We're going to run into this in future building of this in the years to come if this goes farther south. So it's not something that's this is going to be our first discussion on this issue. I do want to see this move forward though tonight and get the benefits appraisal so everybody involved can know where we stand.
Perfect. Any discussion? Councilor Lehman?
The thought of a different type of process for these types of, I mean, not a standard development or assessment, you know, like my street in front of my house is pretty standard, pretty simple process. This is a lot different than a normal assessment. And I think we could probably tweak this process somehow to make it better.
I don't disagree with you that we could tweak the process to make it better, but I don't think there's personally anything wrong with this process as we move forward, because there's still the assessment hearing yet to be done where the assessments, that's when we'll talk about that. So we'll have the benefits analysis. We'll have all that information at that time, and we'll know. It's not like we don't know what the project is going to be at this point, and we're approving it knowing what the project is going to, we're voting on approving it for what the project is going to be. And if no matter if we did the benefits analysis before or after, it's still going to be the same conclusion. So the process.
Mayor, but I think if the tentative benefit analysis was done, granted, it's only 2 parcels in this case, unlike my street project, which is an already defined street, already within the city limits, already has services and stuff. You're not going to do a benefit analysis on 500 households. But when it's 2, could have done a tentative one with rough numbers ahead of time. Sat down, talked to these 2 property owners, worked through some of these issues, you know, find out what their concerns are. You know, maybe you find out that the highest best use on this parcel makes the value X, and the taking of this for a driveway has this value, and the assessment is this value, and this loss is going to offset this by this much, and really your assessment is going to be about 20 grand. Okay, if that was the case, these folks would probably say, I could probably live with that, and it wouldn't be an issue. But you don't know that because that process wasn't done, and I understand you're going to do the process after the fact, but when it's such a different type of process, I think some preliminary work can be done ahead of time.
All right. Mr. Loney?
Yeah, I would just like to add a couple comments. One, we're trying to meet the county schedule. So it wasn't possible. We also have $940,000 of assessments not being contested. And we did say that we would look into this. So if you would look at it and say, the worst case would be there would be no benefit to both parcels, there would be another $150,000 that the city would have to pick up or somehow pick it up. That's how I would look at the issue.
All right.
But sometimes the timelines are such that it can't be done. And that's why we brought forward asking you to act on it tonight. So if we do go forward, yes, we do need the benefit appraisal. If you want to delay the project, do we get the benefit appraisal? That is your right to. But that's why we did what we did.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilor Punt?
Well, and I just want to comment, I cannot imagine what the residents are going through in terms of getting this information and having to evaluate it, because I've never been in that situation myself. And they are very large numbers, very large numbers. I think what this step helps us to get to is actual numbers, because right now it's speculation and it's based on a formula that we use and apply in situations like Councilor Lehman spoke about with his home on an existing street with existing services. So the number that we have right now, it's really a placeholder, which is difficult because then you don't have the actual information. So it feels like the quicker that we can get to understanding what the real number is, the better situation we're going to be in to move forward and make the right decisions.
That's fine.
All right, I'm going to call the vote here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you much, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for being here for the public hearing tonight. The assessment, Mr. Loney, when? How?
Next year.
Next year? Okay, so we've got.
They'll get a notice.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
How about the benefit analysis is a better question.
Mr. Loney, we have a question for you yet.
12 to 13 weeks.
Benefit analysis, will that come back to us?
Yes. That's public information, I believe.
Timeline?
Again, I have to check, but it's going to be a while. It's going to take some time.
6 months?
4 to 6 months.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Now we move on to item number 7, business removed consent agenda. There is none this evening. Item number 8, recess for Economic Development Authority meeting. I will entertain a motion to recess for Economic Development. Councilor Lehman?
Motion to recess the Economic Development.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Punt. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. 5-0. We move to Economic Development. President Clay.
We'll call to order the April 17th, 2012 Economic Development Authority meeting, regular session. Please make note of the roll for me.
Mr. President.
We have a change to our agenda from earlier tonight. We're taking off item number 4, the amendment of business subsidy policy.
That is correct.
Motion by Mr. Whiting.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Seconded by Mr. Lehman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item would be approval of the minutes for March 6th and March 20th. Mr. Whiting.
Move to approve the minutes for March 6th and March 20th.
Seconded by
I'll second.
Pamela Punt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do we have any other business to bring before us tonight?
Mr. Chair, just a correction, when you do adjourn, it should be to next Tuesday night rather than to May 15th.
Tuesday, the
April 24th.
Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, April 24th, at 7 p.m.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Whiting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We reconvene at 8:20. We are going to move a couple of agenda items around to accommodate some folks in the audience tonight. We're going to take item number 10E1 before 10A1. So we're going to go to 10E1, rezone property from major recreation zone to light industry zone and comprehensive plan amendment to guide the property of industrial use. Mr. Leek.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you noted, this is a request to rezone property on the southeast quadrant of 4th Avenue and Shenandoah Boulevard from major recreation zone, MR, to light industry zone. The applicants are Scannell Development Company and the property owners. And I believe we have one of the property owners in the audience this evening. For those who are watching, a couple of graphics to place this request. Again, as I've described it, it's the property that's located at the southeast corner of Shenandoah Drive, which is here, and 4th Avenue. Shenandoah, of course, to the north curves, and it is the site of the I-State preliminary plat and CUP that have previously been approved by the City Council, and the preliminary plat has been extended. The property on the east side to the north is owned by United Properties, and you'll recall was the subject of an AUAR update recently. For those who are not familiar with this area, it's a property that you can identify by the deciduous or the coniferous trees that currently are on the property. This item was before the Planning Commission. The public hearing on it was opened on March 8th, and it was continued to April 5th. As you see from the report, the Planning Commission asked staff to do an inventory of acreage of land available for major recreation use and that available for light industrial. Mr. Noble on our staff did that, and it's contained in the report before you this evening. If you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to share that map with you as well. At the conclusion of their deliberations back on April 5th, the Planning Commission did recommend by a 4-3 vote to the City Council that it rezone the property from major recreation to I-1. That, of course, will involve a comp plan amendment as well. So the first step, should you approve this, is that we will send the comprehensive plan amendment to the adjacent jurisdictions for review and comment as required by state statute. And once we hear back from all of them, it will be submitted to the Metropolitan Council for them to review. Our thought is, given the size of the property, that they will perhaps waive their review of the comp plan amendment based on the impact. But given the events of the last few days, I'm not sure how their staff feels about comp plan amendments from Shakopee. But that is the process that we would follow if you decide to approve the requests this evening. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, I should note at the public hearing, I believe we had only one resident of the area that was present, and she indicated that she generally did not have an issue with the proposed reguiding and rezoning, but expressed concern if it could be utilized for use similar to the I-State use that I alluded to that was approved by the previous City Council. And I should probably also share the concept plan for public purposes that's part of your packet, with the caveat, of course, that this is not a development plan per se for this property. I'm not aware that they have a specific user lined up, and you'll see that there are bulk storage warehouse types of uses that are proposed for this site. So that gives you some idea of what the intent is. But of course, once the property is rezoned, if it is a permitted use in that zone, it is allowed as of right. If it is a conditionally permitted use, it would go through that process at the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. With that, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilor Clay.
How many square feet of storage, bulk storage, warehouse space do we finished, ready to lease and inhabit space available currently?
I'm sorry, how much space is available on the site or is available in the city?
In the city.
In the city, there is something on the order of 1 million square feet. Of course, nearly 500,000 square feet of that is in the ADC 2 building, if you will, located just south of 101.
So if we exclude the ADC building, because that's going to be a football stadium, how many square feet does that leave us?
Approximately 500,000 to 750,000 square feet, to the best of our knowledge, that's still available in the city. We've had some discussion about some of that space in the context of the Scale Unified Planning effort. You know that we've been doing truth testing with a number of representatives of the private sector, brokers, site selectors. And one of the things that at some point you may want to talk about and address is that a lot of that warehousing space in Valley Green Business Park is fairly old space. It has 24-foot ceilings, or in some cases a little bit less, and the market is not terribly fond of that kind of ceiling height for warehouse purposes currently. And so there may be a question about whether or not you can beneficially reuse all of it for the kind of use that it was originally devoted to. But that's a fairly large discussion.
Councilor Whiting?
I'd like to open another fairly large discussion on major recreation zoning. I know it was at one point in time a racetrack zone before the current comp plan. My concern, is 4th Avenue in that area, Shenandoah, likely to fill in with some of them types of businesses that would fill that major recreation under that criteria. And looking at that area, driving through there, I have a concern that if it isn't Canterbury Park taking that property, buying that property and utilizing it, I'm not sure who would or what kind of major recreation would. That's my concern with that area.
And in fairness, I think at the Planning Commission, that's one of the concerns that was expressed by the property owner, Lauren Gross, as well. Since the property has borne that zoning for quite some time, and no major recreation use has come forward for it.
Councilor Lehman?
Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple of questions, and first one's going to seem a little off the wall, but
That'll be different.
yeah. What is the right-of-way of Shenandoah Street to the east? The reason, what I'm asking is, all them trees that are currently there, what type of buffer would we be able to retain if that was developed as I-1 of the existing trees?
Councilor Lehman, members of the council, I'm not sure that I can give you a specific answer without some better idea of what a development proposal is for the site.
The reason I ask is because whatever we do on this site, I'm thinking about the residential across the street on Shenandoah and having some adequate buffering in there.
Can I try to answer your question?
Sure.
I'm Lauren Gross. My wife is the owner of this property. I've owned it since 1972, long before the racetrack came along. The developer, Scannell, did talk to the landowners in the residential neighborhood that you're talking about, and they did address that concern. And there's a natural berm along the westerly side of that property at this point, and they sort of pledged that they would preserve that and assume that that would be kept in place as part of the planning that goes on from here with regard to this. The most recent thing that I heard about this, and being the landowner, I kind of get the mushroom treatment, you know what I mean? They're the developer, I'm in the cave. But the last thing that I heard is that they have one potential user, been the same one all the time, who is now interested in the entire 36 acres that I have there. Originally, they thought they were going to take only 15 acres. So it would appear that they have, and they've assured us, as me and everybody else, that this is not a noise-making, high-traffic type use, that it would be suitable for light industrial development in that area. I hope that somewhat alleviates your concern with regard to the residential property. The neighbors I know were, at least at this point, had no objections. In the packet, you should have a letter from Canterbury Park. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilor Lehman?
my second question, I guess, would be to ask our city planner for a brief overview of our changes to our I-1 zoning. I think, didn't we just change that? What was allowed uses?
We did a few years ago go through some changes that related to the allowance of certain types of vehicle repair and service facilities. I believe that was the major change that we went through in the I districts.
But I-1, we wouldn't have heavy industrial uses.
We would not per se have heavy industrial uses, and the use I referred to, I believe, is under the revised I-1 zone, a conditional use permit. So, of course, that use would require conditions that would make it hopefully consonant with the adjoining neighborhoods so that it didn't impose too much on it. Warehousing and distribution are permitted uses in the I-1 zone. The only thing I want to caution about, and I'm certainly not speaking to the verity of either Mr. Gross or to Skinnell Development, but once the property is rezoned, should for some reason this developer not be there, it is usable for warehousing. And warehousing quite often involves a lot of truck traffic. That would be truck traffic on Shenandoah and 4th Avenue. So you may, at the point of a real development, whether it's a plat or a conditional use permit for a warehousing use that has some outdoor storage, see those potential impacts and reaction from the neighborhood that might be different than it is based on what you have in front of you today. So when you see a concept plan for re-guiding and rezoning, you are not seeing what actually will occur on the ground, and the facts can be different at the time you get a development proposal. That's all I'm saying.
Councilor Lehman?
Mr. Leakin, a difference between major recreation and I-1 as far as transportation uses? One's more cars and one's more trucks?
Well, that might be one way of characterizing it. Major recreation in the racetrack district before it, and I wasn't here when it was racetrack district, was intended to encourage destination recreation kinds of uses. That implies a lot of automobile traffic from visitors. Light industry is intended to be a less intensive industrial form that would generally involve personal vehicles to the extent of commuting, but would include truck traffic that might include deliveries to and from the site, either in small trucks or in semi-tractor-trailer trucks. So it can vary depending on the specific use. You recently heard about Sanmar. Sanmar is going to be, we believe, developed in an I-1 site. It is a pretty large warehouse distribution center, but the nature of its operation is that the semi-traffic is much less than, say, a Kmart-style warehouse distribution center would have been.
Councilor Whiting?
Isn't this property buffered pretty well on the west side by the ballroom and the residential area, fairly well older growth trees? From my knowledge of the area?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean in that there is that potential buffer that could be, or that potential berm that could be used for buffering. But development of this site would involve removing quite a few of the trees that currently provide a buffer
I'm talking on
the surrounding residential areas.
I'm talking on the west side of the property, so the west side residential
I'm talking
area.
about the west side as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there would be a lot of tree removal. This property is on the east side of Shenandoah. The residential properties are to the west of Shenandoah. And so you wouldn't have quite the same natural feeling to the landscape as it develops.
What I'm saying is that the neighborhood fairly buffers itself from the parcel we're talking about.
You might argue that, but you could have argued that in the case of I-State, and that certainly wasn't the way the neighborhood felt about it with that project.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I think it's fair to say that our process is going to require buffering by whatever proposal that comes forward. Mr. Leak can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a pretty accurate statement.
I mean, it's quite a bit. I mean,
Did you hear the question, Mr. Leek?
I think just a clarification for Councilor Whiting's question.
If you look at your packet, you've got this graphic in the packet. This is the subject property. And immediately across Shenandoah, of course, you do have a commercial use. However, there are a substantial number of residences in the Pinewood Estates area that would be adjacent to the property across Shenandoah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lehman again, please.
Mr. Leek,
Yes.
regardless of this property being major recreation or I-1, our processes currently in place are going to require buffering of some sort.
With the caveat that if it's rezoned to I-1 and it's a permitted use and they meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, it will only go through a building permit review for those minimum requirements. It's only when we're talking about a plat or a conditional use or a PUD that we might be able to craft additional requirements for landscaping than we have in the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance requirements are really focused on landscaping and screening of traffic areas from headlight wash, screening of waste areas, screening of storage areas. Now, if there's a proposed exterior storage component, that will require a conditional use permit, as an example, and that will go through a public hearing process and the crafting of conditions that might be greater than what the basic ordinance allows.
All right. Thank you much. All right, Mr. Lehman.
Is that the same
You can
for-
sit down, Mr. Leek.
Is that the same for major recreation?
That principle is going to be the same for the principle is the same for any zoning district. If it's a permitted use, it's subject to whatever requirements are in Chapter 11 for screening and landscaping. But we don't have the authority, at least at a staff level, to require additional berming and screening requirements beyond the ordinance.
So basically what he's saying is that if this goes to I-1, then all bets are off as to exactly what the property will look like when it's developed, as long as it's permitted use. Is that correct?
No, that's not quite correct. I usually don't make such extreme statements. What I'm saying is it will have to comply with the zoning ordinance.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to craft additional screening requirements beyond those in the zoning regulations. And Mr. Thompson will set me straight if I'm misspeaking, but that's what I'm saying. My caution whenever we do rezonings is that you are not approving any representations to you, whether they're graphic or verbal, about what's going to occur. If it's rezoned and someone else comes forward to develop it with a different idea and it's a permitted use, we will require what the zoning ordinance requires.
Right. Ma'am, you come on up, would you please?
Ann Mulcrone, 2384 Pinewood Drive. I live directly across the street from this property. And when Mr. Scannell, when the representative for the Scannell Properties was here, he had a really benign plan with no driveways or anything off of Shenandoah, leaving the berm and some trees and warehousing. There's a lot of truck traffic further out on 4 already. A lot of truck traffic. It doesn't bother us at all. I'm wondering two things. Why would we have to, or could we rezone it and leave Shenandoah the way it is, considering that is quite a large residential neighborhood there. It's a large neighborhood, not just Pinewood and the streets off of there and Eastway, but over behind us too. And I don't know why Shenandoah would have to be part of the truck traffic. And my question is, if you rezoned it for Scanell Properties, can you rezone it for Scanell Properties? Do you have to rezone it permanently for anything that might come in there? Like, it's really scary if another I-truck kind of a situation come up there. Stinky, noisy, 24/7.
All right, we don't need to go into I-State, please. We can
So-
just stick to this.
So
But
now,
what you're, exactly, I understand what you're saying. And with this, it will be rezoned until, or if someone else asks for it to be rezoned back, if it were decided.
Mayor,
So-
members of the council, to answer the questions in reverse order, I don't believe the city has any authority to rezone a property for an individual applicant only.
Okay, so
If
you
it's
rezone
rezoned,
it-
it's rezoned for all zoning purposes.
I see.
Unless at some point in the future circumstances change, someone requests a comp plan amendment and zoning change, and the city council sitting at that time says, yeah, I-1 didn't work out, we'll make it something else. So it is rezoned for all purposes, and this particular developer could go away, and we could be dealing with a different one. As to the access issue, under the city's codes, on city streets, local streets, our city engineer makes the final determination on what access would be. And with any given development plan, whether it's through a building permit, a plat, or a CUP, we would review for what the access is, but I don't think we can contractually limit the access to the site on rezoning.
Thank you, Ms. McCrone. I appreciate you being here tonight. All right, any further discussion from council? Do we have a motion on the floor yet?
We do not have a motion.
We need a motion, please. Councilor Punt?
I will offer a motion to approve resolution number 7186, approval of a request to amend the comprehensive plan to guide this property for industrial use, and ordinance number 854, approval of a request to rezone the subject property to light industrial zone and move its adoption.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilor Whiting. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we are going to continue on with the agenda and skip 10A1 for other folks that are in the audience tonight and go to 10F1 for bid results and contract award for community center roof. Mr. McNeil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. In March, you authorized staff to seek bids for the replacement of the community center roof. As you were told at that time, it is the original roof at the community center and is now past its 15-year design life. As such, it is experiencing leaks, and staff is having to deal with those on a more frequent basis. Council also had authorized Skyline Building Envelope Consultants to put together the plans and specifications and assist with the bidding process. Ron Chaleski is the individual who is here tonight and can certainly answer any of the technical questions that you might have about the bid or the process. There were a total of 4 different roof types bid. The base bid is a build-up roof system, and that has a 25-year warranty. Alternates 1 and 2 were both 20-year design, and alternate number 3 was basically a replacement of the existing system, which is a single-ply ballasted membrane roof that had a 15-year warranty. We opened bids last week. There were a total of 8 bids which were received. The information is in your packet. The base bid ranged from just over $1 million, $1,029,548, to $1.4 million. Alternates number 2 and 3 were somewhat less, but not appreciable enough to really make a difference in our view. And then alternate 3 had bids which ranged from $813,000 and change to approximately $1.4 million. Now, we were notified shortly after the bids were opened that the company which submitted that low bid, Schwickert Companies, had an error in their bid, and they had underbid it to the tune of about $180,000. As a result, they asked that that bid be withdrawn. Assuming that you would want to allow them to do that, that means then that the lowest bids in all of the alternates was submitted by the same company, McPhillips Brothers Roofing Company. The difference between the base bid and the replacement bid that is for the system that's there now is only $16,000. That was somewhat surprising to us. We thought there'd be a much wider spread. You have therefore two choices to make tonight. First, assuming that you want to proceed with this. First, do you want to allow the errant low bid submitted by Schwickert and Company to be withdrawn? I think probably legally the city could prevail and force them to do the work. However, we know that if they're going to be losing money on it, they're likely going to be difficult, and we may have a substandard product with which that we're going to be forced to live. Assuming then that you're going to proceed then with the low bid on the rest of it, staff would recommend that you go with the base bid. For the difference of $16,000, you would have an additional 10-year warranty, and you would also have no dollar limit, which would be the difference between that and the bid alternate number 3. Again, those were all submitted by McPhillips Brothers Roofing Company, and so we don't have to deal with that in terms of a difference of bidders. Funding for this, as you were told back in March, would come from the building fund. There is a $7.1 million balance there. That's the reason why you have a building fund, so that when you get a large ticket item like this, you can fund it. The bid did come in somewhat higher than what we had anticipated. I think the estimate for the base bid was in the $957,000 range, so it's about 7.6% over that. However, as you looked at the bids that were received, they're all pretty close together with the exception of one, and therefore we think it's probably a legitimate bid. Do you have any questions of me or for the consultant?
Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, see if I can understand this a little bit. I talked to city administrator today about this a little bit, but apparently there is a certain amount of slope to this flat roof. 1/8 of an inch per foot or something?
An 1/8 of an inch is what is there now. Currently, code requires 1/4 of an inch, and so the new bids would have it designed and built with a 1/4 inch slope. I did speak with Mr. Shaleski on that, and he can certainly add to this, but he indicates that in order for the warranty to remain valid, it needs to have a 1/4 inch slope. So I think that's probably a question which needs to be answered, or is answered just by virtue of the fact we don't want to build anything that's not going to have the warranty that's valid.
And obviously, water runs downhill, so it's probably a good idea to have a slope to it, but
it runs twice as fast with a 1/4
I guess
inch
the
versus
question that
1/8,
I
yes.
have is if you take basically a flat roof and you build it up 1/4 of an inch on one end, if you build it up 1/4 on the other end, isn't it now flat again?
Rod, come on up.
So I'm not understanding exactly how this is done. Not that I need to understand it, I just.
Good evening, Mayor and other council members. In regards to your question, the biggest portion of the building, which is over your hockey arena area, is essentially a gable roof. So down the center of the roof, running from the east to the west, there is a ridge line. From that ridge line, it slopes down to the south and to the north. And the structural slope in the building structure itself is an 1/8 inch per foot. Okay. The other roof areas are of a different design. Essentially, they all have an 1/8 inch, but not all of them are gable in shape. So essentially, for example, roof area B, which is the small roof area with the cooling tower on it, slopes from an adjacent wall towards the south. The other roof sections essentially slope in one direction, 1/8 of an inch per foot. Okay. And as he mentioned before, the existing building code requirements are for 1/4 inch per foot. So as a design professional for roofing and waterproofing, I need to follow that code requirement. Any other questions?
Did that answer your question?
I still don't understand it.
What do they build it up with to get that extra 1/8 of an inch higher?
It's tapered insulation, what they call tapered insulation. So essentially, the roofing contractor would be installing 4x8 sheets of polyisocyanurate insulation that is thicker on one side versus the other side. So that sloped material provides the additional 1/8 to add up to a total of 1/4 inch per foot. Did I answer your question? Yes. Okay.
Additional questions? All right. Any more questions from Mr. McNeil?
Mayor and Council, the recommended action, there's a resolution in your packet tonight, and we would recommend that you adopt that, which would award the contract to McPhillips Brothers Roofing. That would be the first item.
I got a couple questions first. When this originally came through council last year, it was originally at, was it $250,000 is what the estimate was for it? Somewhere in that range?
Probably based on staff estimate at that time, that's quite probable.
Right, at that time. And then when this came to us for bid, it was a range of 500,000 to 1.2 or something like that. I'm trying to remember what the numbers were, somewhere in there. That I'm just making sure that I'm remembering correctly, because I was really surprised when it was this high, obviously.
Yeah.
Councilor Lehman?
I think it was 5 to 6, we were told, and then shortly after that, staff came back and said it might be more about 6, 8 to $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Right. With something this extraordinarily big, I have a problem authorizing moving forward with this without knowing what our long-term plan is for the community center. If the community center is going to stay the exact same way that it is, then it has to be done. It obviously has to be done, and it needs to be fixed. It's not an incredibly immediate need to get fixed right now. It needs to be done eventually, but I would rather have the discussion as council as to what we're going to do with that community center in the long run before we put $1 million into repairing the roof, when if we in the next 3 to 5 years are going to do something to add on for the residents of Shakopee to the community center, if it were done at that time, would we save money, or how we would move forward with that? Councilor Whiting.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. It is a city building. I think we need to be good stewards of that and maintain that. I think in the future, if that community center expands, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but this roofing system would be still in place. We wouldn't be replacing a roof with an addition to unless we did some strange things with it. I don't believe that we'd still need that roof in 10 years if we do an addition, is what I'm saying, and even more at that point. So my feeling is that we need to maintain this structure. If we do go forward with any other plan, I don't think this would be affected by it.
Okay, Councilor Clay?
My words exactly. Except better
Better,
spoken.
yes.
I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was pretty much half the cost of this roof for the water damage improvements that we had on this building once already. So, I mean, if you want to let it rain on the basketball courts, that's up to you, but we need to fix the roof.
Right.
We can't let it run inside for 10 years, and I mean, we just need to fix the roof. The question really is how good do we want to fix it?
And how fast we want the water to run off.
Right.
Exactly.
And, you know, with that, I'll make a motion to grant Switcher's request to withdraw their bid for bid alternate number 3. And then offer Resolution 7190, accepting the bids and awarding the contract for replacement of the roof with a 5% contingency by the city administrator's assistant. And I think we need to go with the base bid. If we're gonna put a roof on it, just get it done and do it right.
Well-
You know?
Okay, Councilor Whiting?
I'll second that for discussion.
Councilor Whiting?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The base bid now, to me, in Minnesota, single ply roof like we put on there is not adequate. Now, the base bid, that was the built-up roof. And
That's the 25-year warranty.
Okay.
Alternate number 3 is the replacement of what's there now, which would be the membrane roof with the 15-year warranty. For the difference of $16,000, it really makes more sense in our view to go with the longer warranty product.
Absolutely. Okay, just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
4-ply, isn't it?
4-ply. That's the only one.
Yeah, I figure if we're gonna do it for 16,000, you might as well get the Cadillac.
Just don't park it on the roof.
Exactly.
Fair minimum for Minnesota, I think.
All right, any other discussion? Councilor Punt?
Mr. McNeil, isn't it the case that we're about 3 years overdue? We've put this off for about 3 years. Is that correct? If I remember from previous discussion?
Correct. So it's not getting any better, unfortunately.
Correct. I do have one question for you, sir. With your experience in replacement of these type of roofs,
Yes.
have you seen any kind of consistent structural damage when you kind of pull back and see what's going on underneath it?
If
concerned about that.
Some of you had some discussion here about possibly postponing it into the future. What you're going to end up having is when you have leakage like we have in this particular building in several different locations, the metal deck is going to eventually start to rust. And I'm anticipating finding some of that already, okay, because it has been leaking for several years. I have provisions in the specification for addressing those particular areas. But if you were to leave it for 10 years, for example, or some time frame like that, we would end up replacing several sections of the metal deck, which becomes very labor intensive and quite expensive. Yes.
So when you say you have provisions in the specifications, has that been discussed with the bidders and?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that's a
Yep.
probability that's going to need to be addressed.
Oh, yes.
Probability.
Yes. Yep. And the built-up roof system that has been specified is the tapered insulation, the base, and 3 additional plies for a total of 4 plies. And it is a very proven system for the state of Minnesota here. Good system that's going to last you not only your 25 years, but into the future also. I've made provisions in the specifications, for example, around the perimeter of the various roof areas. Normally, a roof system will fail prematurely because of the sun and the weather elements beating on the base flashings. The base flashings are essentially covered up with metal flashings. So that's going to preserve the overall roof system and allow it to perform much, much better. So, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Councilor
Oh,
Light?
just a quick one. Since you're going to be adding the polystyrene, oscillating, whatever it was.
Tapered polyiso, yeah.
Would we be able to anticipate a slightly lower heating bills?
Already worked with the city and with your energy provider, and they've gone through the calculations, and I pushed them quite hard to provide some type of rebate, but they would not. But as far as energy savings in the building, you should see some, okay, because of the additional R value that you will have.
Okay.
But again, going through your energy provider, they would not actually give a rebate back to the city, okay, for that additional insulation. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, and just for clarity, I was by no means saying we put it off for 10 years. Just so everybody knows, I was saying a month until we could have a discussion about what we want to do with that building before we spend $1 million on that. That was all I was intending. Councilor Lehman.
Even if we decide we're no longer going to have a community center, we're going to sell a building, it's pretty hard to sell a building with a leaky roof.
That's true. You're absolutely right. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, now we move back to item number 10A1, sewer availability charge credit policy.
Really shy, if you'll let me take on this. We worked on this together, Julie and I, on the SAC credit policy, bringing it back to council. We brought it to you before. The direction was to take it to the EDAC committee, get some comments from them. They reviewed it and pretty much looked at it and then pretty much approved it, what we had done. We did revise a little bit in the step process of the policy, just looking at how it would flow better. And essentially, what we'd be using this policy for is existing businesses as well as new ones. An example could be County Road 69. We put some sewer in if we want to use those SAC credits for those parcels, or East Shakopee industrial area on the east side of town, or any future new business that comes in if you wanted to provide an incentive. There is a, if you look at the policy, the basic requirements, which would be section 4, and that's what we see that we'd have to enter into in a basic agreement with each parcel that would want to get use these SAC credits. And it pretty much lays out the criteria there on how we would say that we should be utilizing, is it providing some kind of business incentive and job creation, spin-off development, all those things are questions. Each application would have to be brought back before the council on entering into an agreement. So with that, I would take any questions and ask you to adopt Resolution 7184, which adopts the policy.
Councilor Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had talked at one point of like, and the number may be wrong, but I think it was 1,900 or 1,000 credits you had.
Right. We got 1,494 credits from the Met Council, and my analysis before showed that we should probably keep about 1,000 of those credits for the lift station, the force main, and gravity sewer that we got from the Met Council. So I estimate around 500 are available for this policy.
So 500, okay, that's my question, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Lehman?
Would this be, would the two properties in the earlier discussion be candidates for something like this?
Which one?
The, what's the name of them two properties?
For the Valley View Road extension, Hyosec
Right.
and
Thompson.
Haystack and Thompson.
They're not on city services now?
No.
Could they potentially be candidates for this policy?
Not according to this policy. It's for commercial and industrial, not residential.
If I recall, when we first discussed this, I think Councilor Clay brought it up that it was probably one of the things we wanted to consider was to get residential properties that were on septic systems in Old Shakopee area off of their septics and into the system so that they weren't leaching into the groundwater and so on and so forth. Boy, that's pretty good memory for an old man, huh?
Yeah.
Nobody said it's accurate yet.
No, it was accurate.
No, that's pretty accurate.
And I guess I don't see anything like that in here anywhere, and it's a little bit of a concern, I guess. Doesn't have to say.
I think Ms. Linehan, she's the one who researched this. She has to get off her chair.
Mayor and council, when we began looking at this policy, we were checking into other communities that have done a similar policy, of which there are very few, because very few cities have SAC credits. When we researched this, we found that the cities who had implemented this were dealing primarily in commercial and industrial. They were not bringing this forward for residential because it was difficult to assign what we would call economic development value. The idea behind this policy specifically was to be able to do a review when applications came through of, are you increasing tax capacity? Are you increasing employment? Will you be bringing spin-off businesses? Will there be some benefits to the community that will justify the use of these credits? I would recommend, if you wish to go forward on a residential policy, that we do a policy separate from this, because you're going to have very different criteria on whether you approve it or not, and it would be based on a very different set of parameters versus if you're here to improve the business climate and the opportunities for individuals either looking to stay or come into the community. So at this point, if you really want to bring that piece forward, we'll develop a secondary policy.
Clay?
I would like to see that secondary policy developed.
Sure.
For reasons of environmental protection.
Correct.
And more than that, our wellhead protection for our water supply here in the city. All of our wells currently are on this lower level, which provides the least amount of protection.
Right, into the groundwater, yes. Yeah, we could certainly proceed with that.
We wouldn't need to borrow, I wouldn't think, more than 40 or 50 from the pool.
Yeah, there really wouldn't be, from when you look at the use of SAC credits, there really wouldn't be a great use of what's existing out there. But yes, we can certainly pull that piece together.
Councilor Whiting?
My concern with moving it to a residential policy, and I understand your point's very important, but you know, there's a lot of different criteria. You know, in 2016 when they redo 3rd Avenue, I want some of them SAC credits too for my assessment. You know, it's going to be everybody wanting a piece of that action, and so that criteria would have to be very, very different. I like the idea of having it as an economic development tool. It just adds one more tool in the toolbox for our EDAC to work with, and the EDA. And I think if we limit it to a certain percentage, maybe for a possible residential use, that might go better with my thought pattern.
When you bring it forward into a residential and you start dealing with issues, it often goes in the same avenue as when you're dealing with assessments and other residential-based issues. Are you going to make it income-based? Are you going to make it, you know, are there specific criteria? And then you really get into some very difficult data privacy issues. It's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah. Councilor Lehman?
Actually, I think it's a lot easier than that, and the example Councilor Whiting used is not a very accurate or valid example, because 3rd Avenue currently, at least where you are, currently has sewer. Therefore, you would not be eligible for this. It would strictly be for properties that currently do not have city services. So let's say you have an old house next to you that's still on a septic system, and everybody else over the years has gotten city sewer, and that one's just the odd duck out. That one would be one that you'd want to get into the system. So they might be eligible for the SAC charge only. They're still going to have the assessments of running it through their property to their house and paying them cost, and they're still going to pay for some other cost. They're just not going to pay the access charge. Currently, as we heard earlier tonight, they've got the option of saying, I like the system that I have. The city can build it right up to my property line. I've got 3 years. I'm not going to use it. Or they can let their system fail, go to the county, try to build a new mound system, which we had over here by the fire station, which, as a matter of fact, I think that guy did build a new mound system. So now he's got the argument he can make that for the next 30, 40 years, whatever the life is of that, we can build all around him, and how do we show benefit to have him hook up to it? That's
true.
So I think in the bigger picture, as Councilor Clay is bringing up, that we're in a lower basin here where all our water is, and we need to encourage to not have old leaking septic systems going down into our drinking water.
So, Ms. Linehan, how long will it take to put that together?
That's going to be a little challenging because I want to also make sure there aren't other organizations that already have some of these opportunities in play. And we'll be coordinating with Mr. Loney and Mr. Leek and sit down and take a look at what's really out there already.
So can you come back to us in 2 months?
It'll probably be July after we get the debt refunded and the audit done and the budget started, so. Yeah.
All right, so first meeting in July, we'll at least talk
we'll
about it
aim
again?
for that.
By August, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Gotta get commitment dates.
Right. How about that? I learned
August
sometimes.
is what I heard, right? Sometime in August.
We heard first meeting of July, we're going to discuss it again.
Well, she got the budget.
All right, first meeting in August, we're going to discuss it again.
Oh, that would be just a separate thing. Do this too.
All right, so, any other questions on this policy?
Where's the motion?
I think we have one in a second, don't we?
No, you don't yet. We're approval of the resolution.
Councilor Whiting?
Move the approval of the resolution adopting Resolution 7184, adopting a sewer availability charge credit policy.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Clay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, item E2 is deleted, 10E2 is deleted. We go on to item 11A, 2012 Arbor Day proclamation. Do we discuss this?
It seems to me that there's supposed to be a public reading of this for a reason unknown to me, but if someone would want to waive that, we could certainly do that and just offer a resolution proclaiming April 27th as Arbor Day.
Well, I think the mayor should read it.
Yeah, I do too.
I'll second that, yeah.
Aren't you guys fun? Wasting everybody's time. All right. Action proclaiming April 27, 2012 as Arbor Day, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for homes, fuel for fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property value, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of spiritual renewal. Now therefore, I, Brad Tabke, Mayor of the City of Shakopee, Minnesota, do hereby declare Friday, April 27, 2012 as Arbor Day in the City of Shakopee, and urge citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and this is my favorite part coming up, further, I urge citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Given under my hand in the seal of the City of Shakopee, the 17th day of April, 2012. So there is Arbor Day. Made me feel good. Councilor Lehman.
Don't we have to vote on this before you can give this under your hand and seal?
I haven't signed it yet.
Huh?
I'm just reading it.
Oh.
It's a proclamation. As I recall, it has something to do with our Tree City designation, so it wasn't just a matter of giving the mayor an opportunity to
Is the city
demonstrate
gonna
his
have
public
the
address
tree
skills.
sale this year?
I don't believe that we are.
No?
No tree sale this year. We've had success to varying degrees in previous cleanup days. I think this was the year that they decided they would let people catch their breath, and we'll see what else we can do in future years.
I'll get some seeds from my yard.
You'll have to gladden your heart with some existing trees.
Do we need a motion?
I don't believe so, because it is in fact.
It's simply a mayor proclamation, so we do not need a motion. And next week, I will be reading the Lorax.
The what?
Lorax.
We'll need a motion for that.
That's for a Sioux City proclamation.
Sioux City
Book or the screenplay?
I don't know.
Definitely the book. All right, council member reports. Let's start with Councilor Whiting.
Thank you. I have nothing to report tonight.
Councilor Clay.
Oh, I had something here a minute ago with its Utilities Commission. Not that one. I don't have anything to report.
I was gonna say, you want us to come back to you?
Yeah, we'll come
Councilor
back
Lehman?
later.
169 Corridor Coalition. Instead of taking an hour on this, I'm gonna hit the fine points.
Thank you.
Let's see here. We had Mark Phillips, is that his name? Deed, D-E-E-D.
The Commissioner of Deed.
Addressed a group, and some really interesting stuff came out. I was listening intently because it was really interesting, fascinating stuff. And maybe I get my numbers wrong here. Mr. Leake was in attendance, so he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to round the numbers, 41% of the jobs in Minnesota are located 10 miles from 169. It's amazing numbers. He also caught my attention saying that we have too many jobs in Minnesota, which some could argue differently on that, which I did. I said, if that's the case, why is the Met Council projections for 2030 telling us that we need to like almost double the jobs that we currently have if we have too many? Well, apparently the issue is there's too many in some places. Some places where they have no ability to get there, and if they do get there, they have no place to stay. So, which is really a development problem where certain industries tend to try to take advantage of tax areas and build where taxes may be low, but then again, so are services. And then they wonder how come that they can't get employees because there's nothing there and nowhere for them to stay. So the fascinating point was that 41% of the jobs in Minnesota are 10 miles from 169. So it really shows the importance that we have as a group, and including the city and scale and everybody else, have been making about the importance of 169. They tried to link future TED dollars, transportation dollars, to improvements that could show that there was going to be an increase in jobs specific to a project, which I think between Mr. Leake, myself, and a few others, I think we educated the individual that that's really not reality. The fact of the matter is that along with improvements in general, like 169, 494 improvements, that being done does put a brighter light on future development in Shakopee. And it's not tied specifically to a job supplier in Shakopee or a job supplier in Edina or whatever the case might be. It's just in general that as them improvements happen, they help larger areas and the future of those larger areas by people that make decisions that, I'm not going to move a business to where I can't get in and out of it. So we're hopeful that they'll tweak their policy and mindset just a little bit and understand that there's a larger rationale to some of these larger improvements that help larger areas in general. So it was pretty good. It was a pretty good meeting. I enjoyed it.
Very good. Anything else?
That was the short version.
That was the very short version.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Punt?
I don't have any updates tonight.
All right, I've just got a couple things. Last week, Senator Klobuchar was in Shakopee to look at our STEM classes at the high school, and she was extremely, she was very happy with what she saw at the high school. The kids were doing amazing projects, and it was really cool to see what they were doing with technology and engineering, and she really liked what we're doing and said that we had some of the best in the state. So that was pretty fun to meet her and go around and tour with students. Then last Friday was a SCALE meeting where Met Council came and spoke to SCALE, and it was fairly non-eventful but a tad contentious at some times. It was just everybody kind of getting out their feelings and emotions and all of that kind of stuff. But it was a good meeting overall, and have places that we can work on, and we're getting together again within the next 30 days to figure out how we work better with Scott County and Met Council and how we move forward that direction. So overall, it was good. Then the Friday before that, actually, Mr. McNeil and I met with Arlene McCarthy, who's in charge of transportation for Met Council, and Pat Bourne, who is basically executive director. Is that what his title is? and we had a very good lunch and got to talk about a lot of the issues that Shakopee specifically has with Met Council and a lot of the successes we've got. Also that day, I did a police department ride-along with Officer Mordvet, and that was fun. It was an uneventful night, which was kind of a bummer, but it was good just to go out and see everything that they do. So that was good. Exactly. But they said Monday night they had the exact same, they had double the amount of things going on as they had all Friday through Sunday of that weekend. So they were, they thought it was an interesting weekend with that. And, all right, is there any other business at this point? Oh.
You come back to me. I found my stuff.
Oh, I thought you were done. Sorry.
Yeah,
Councilor Clay.
This is the short version.
Please.
First, with the Shakopee Utilities Commission, I just want to catch you up on the progress for the Shakopee Environmental Learning Center that's being built up there next to the high school. They have got the installation of the fiber optic cable is being planned. They've got the Utilities Commission's electric crews have offered to volunteer their time to trench in the cable and to provide space in the trench for seasonal water service to the site. An energy storage system, which is otherwise known as a battery, is being purchased from Silent Power. It's a big battery, so that the photovoltaic and wind generation of electricity that takes place during the day can be stored for use at night. And the wind generation equipment is in the process of, is proceeding for the site, or the ordering of it. The new school superintendent is hoping to have this completed and ready to go by the 2012-2013 school year, which might be a bit hopeful, but we'll continue to be hopeful. The County Road 69 project, the water main portion of that, the bids came in. The original engineer's estimate was $502,000. The low bid came in at $388,000, so nicely below expectations. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. And since you took it back, I remember one thing that we did last Tuesday, I'm sure everyone would like to know, was a first intergovernmental working group with Shakopee, Woodwalken, and Sioux community, us and Prior Lake, myself, Mr. McNeil, Mr. Leek, and Mr. Loney were there from Shakopee and
Scott County.
And Scott County. Thank you, sir. And we had a very good discussion about what the group is going to do, how often we're going to meet. Chose not to have a chair or person directly responsible for the group, but just to have it all, everyone working together. And we are, over the course of the next 2 months, 3 months, getting together our ideas from each jurisdiction as to what we want to come out of this intergovernmental working group. The tribe shared a phenomenal amount of information that, as I understand, hasn't been shared before as to what they own, how much they own, what their plans are for the future, and we're very candid and great in the discussion, I thought. It was a very good step for moving forward, so we'll want to have this probably as an agenda item sometime, won't we?
We can certainly propose that.
To figure out what we want to do moving forward with it. So it was very good. So any other business? Item 12? All right, let's take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll go to economic development. Council Lehman?
Motion for a 10-minute recess.
Second.
Second by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are recessed for 10 minutes until 9:35. All right, we reconvene the meeting at 9:35. We are in a, there's a spot for you here, Bruce. At our last city council meeting, we discussed more incorporating strategic planning and our ability to think long-term into our city council meetings. And the general goal is to have the first meeting of the month be more day-to-day business of the city and immediate needs, and the second meeting of the month, which would be the third Tuesday, be more strategic planning and talking about the goals that we set up during the goal-setting sessions, just so everybody kind of gets caught up to why we're sitting in a little table today. But I wanted to sit like this so we can all have a more informal discussion about what we feel and what needs to happen and where we move with things, as opposed to a structured that I call on everybody. So feel free to talk. I'll referee discussions and that kind of thing, but it's not going to be a me calling on everybody as it goes through, just so we kind of have the ground rules for everything.
So it's an open discussion.
Yes.
We should get him a white and black striped shirt.
Which this open discussion is going to be done at 10:15.
Okay.
So
Structured open discussion.
Yes, we will not go later than that. So just so everybody knows, tonight's topic of discussion is economic development, and what we do to move forward, what we think our strengths are and bright spots, what our goals and expectations are for Shakopee for economic development, what kinds of things we want to have happen. And this is also discussion for staff to speak freely as well, just so everybody knows. So I have three main goals of what I would like to see out of the discussion this evening. First one is general idea of expectation and goals from everyone in this room as to what we want as Shakopee for economic development, where we want time spent. The second one is to talk about our economic development staffing and what we want to have roles currently. Economic development falls to Mr. Leek, and what all he and his group does on a day-to-day basis, and what kind of time commitment is put to economic development, and how we can help as city council to either, if need be, free up time, prioritize to make sure that everybody knows what our goals are moving forward. And then the third part of that is, based on that discussion, put together a plan and talk about staffing needs moving forward as to what we need to do in order to get economic development in Shakopee continue moving forward and growing and building on the successes that we've had. So what does everyone else have? Is that?
Well, I think we've been very fortunate, and we didn't have to do a whole lot, and we've had a boom of activity. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we have to pretty much give away the ship right off Jump Street yet.
What does giving away the ship look like to you?
It looks expensive. It looks like a reverse Robin Hood. That would be taken from the poor and given to the rich. But we also now have things that we didn't have then also. We've got the SAC credit policy now that we didn't have before. We've got a pretty solid footing and TIF and abatement that, well, I guess we've had that over the past too, but that is an option. I think where we're really lacking is the ability to take a potential opportunity and move with it. The 401 thing that we were at, I've been thinking about that, and I came up with an idea, and it probably won't work, but it makes a lot of sense to me because I'm just a lay person. When you see them big flip charts, they said anybody should be able to show a potential opportunity, what you have to offer. Anybody should be able to do that. The 8th grader at the hardware store, I guess, is the example. And I envision you asked me what my vision was, would be one of them things right there, but they're the clear plastic ones with, maybe one that the first one folds over and it's got the land uses in the zoning on it. So you're Mr. Developer and you come in and you say, I'm looking for 45 acres to put my widget shop on. and you flip the map and you say, there's one, and there's one. And then you say, my widgets need 16-inch water lines coming to it, or 25,000 volts of power. And then you flip over your utilities one and you say, how about that one right there? It has both of them. So you could actually take the existing things that we have and put them onto them overlays. I think we have the capability to do it now on computer. We just don't have the capability of printing it out on something like that to have up front somewhere here when somebody comes in to walk somebody through that process. We've got our sites identified. They meet the zoning. Oh, water's there. Or it could be ran there fairly easily. Power's close by. It could be run there pretty easily. Or transportation, maybe you need rail, maybe you want to look over here in this area. You know, it doesn't seem like it would take a lot to do that. And I think it'd be an easy tool to put together to be able to have pretty much anybody, instead of like they did at the 401 where this person can't answer the question and now they got to wait and call an engineering guy and get him to answer that question, and now you got a zoning question, you got to call this guy, get him over there, and oh geez, now we got a finance question, we got to talk to this person.
All right, so think bigger picture for me.
Okay.
Is that goal to create jobs? Is that goal to improve our transportation infrastructure? What goal does that fulfill? Because that's a tactic, not really strategy. And overall, what are you trying to accomplish with that? Is it simply bringing businesses to Shakopee? Is it bringing high quality jobs?
I'm trying not to miss opportunities is what I'm trying to do.
Okay, that's perfect. Councilor Plum.
So it sounded.
Sorry, I'm not
just
calling on people.
Just to kind of jump in, I mean, the tactic that you're describing sounds like talking about that customer service approach and how do we not kind of get in the way of ourselves, so to speak, to work with whomever it is coming to have a discussion with us. And it also does assume that people are potentially starting here, which I don't know that that's typically the case.
Right.
Because it's almost like a retail approach where we consider ourselves that one-stop shop, and this is where people know to come. And but based on how the network is built, we've got property owners, developers, there's us, there's the county. So I'm not sure where and how people are getting to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's something that I would need to understand in order to know what kind of tools and processes would be needed to address that. It's just.
I like the tool idea, and maybe
you need a marketing strategy to get
Mr. Leek maybe can get
with
a hold
the
of some.
parenthetical comment that it's not as easy to put together as you think it might be.
Right.
That's why there's a lot of discussion at scale about doing it at that level.
Mm-hmm.
No, there are probably
because
software
it's going to require
too.
resources to do it.
A lot of data input.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I think that that's a good goal to have, is some of those tools, and I like the idea of having more opportunity. I also like the idea of having that focal point of one person, but I'd like to also take it a step further and have a marketing package, basic generic marketing package that doesn't necessarily have all the details for that specific company. Here's Shakopee, here's our demographics, here's why you want to build here, here's why you want to bring your widget shop here. But then on a secondary level, once you have that first contact, you do a little bit of research, and that's when the EDAC maybe takes over and makes, whoever that contact person is, makes that little research and a little more developed presentation to them.
It's kind of a selling strategy approach. So if you think about as a consumer, because I think most people, we're all consumers and we can relate to that you're making the purchase of perhaps a television. So in purchasing the TV, the ways that you can go about getting information about that right now are going to a store, going to a website, or talking to people that you know who have certain TVs. So those are just some basic ways that you get that information. So, but if you think about going from a television to buying a home, to buying or building a home or something of that nature that's much more large scale with much more complexity, that's really, I think that's kind of what we're facing is how do you market and sell the opportunities within Shakopee with all that complexity in such a way that it's more of, it's not that consumer selling, which is kind of help yourself. It's how do we potentially make it more kind of full service, where if you think about if you're wanting to build a home with a builder, you probably wouldn't just look at their website. You would probably want to talk to a person. You would probably want to review materials or greater detail of information with a person. You may want to go to another resource to look at what kind of tile, what kind of carpet, and compare pricing. And there's so many details in that compared to buying a television. So I guess that's where like my thought process is how do we make it just conceptually an easy sell and have those kind of tools available with that one point of contact. So you think of that.
Can I ask a question first? And you said that we should be blunt. So at the risk of causing myself problems, I'm going to be blunt. At what point do you decide who it is you want to sell to have them in the community?
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, someone approached us, wonderful idea for a business using Raceway Park. They want to bring 25,000 vehicles onto the site that have been in accidents and hold 6 auctions a year. You want me to sell to them or whoever is designated to do economic development? Don't you need to decide who it is you're trying to sell to? And I agree there's a real need for marketing materials, but I think if you listen to Bruce Moss in Legos 401, you'll know that generic marketing materials aren't going to work for site selectors if you're dealing in that arena. Because they already know what they want. They're going to find it out from you right away without looking at your glossy materials that say, Shakopee's a really great place and the people have a good work ethic. So I think you need to have a discussion about who it is you're trying to sell to before you can talk about what the tactics are and the strategies are that you're going to use to get there.
All right, so
and I will tell you that I have reservations. Let me go back to 2009. One of the concepts related to the EDAC was that they might play some of that role. I've worked with them for a while now. I have some reservations about their ability as appointed committee members to play that role. So I think you're going to have a discussion about how much work you can really expect them to do in their role as committee members.
They are volunteers.
And they are volunteers,
Yeah.
correct.
And they haven't had formal training, they've had virtually no training. They are talking about working in an arena that is very, very defined. And it takes some real specific skill building if you're going to do this successfully.
Well, let me ask a question. You know, I know over the past 10, 12 years in my job, things have changed and people have gone away and people have absorbed those positions. I've taken on a few different hats, and I know Mr. Leek has taken on several different hats, and I know we used to have a economic development gentleman, Mr. Snook.
Paul Snook, yeah.
And that position was never filled again, and I know you're really busy with transit things now, maybe more than...
Maybe not so much, depending on what the Met Council does in the next few months.
Yeah, we'll have to have that discussion too, but what amount of time, do you focus your time at a certain percentage, or how much economic development?
It really depends. I mean, one of the things that I don't think that you folks see right now, and it involves Julie, it involves your city attorney, it involves Springstead, and it involves me, is since you made a decision to go ahead with 3 projects that have abatement or tax increment financing, it's continual on just those 3 projects.
We literally get scores of emails a day that we have to read, review the documents.
Respond
go
to,
through
make
all the
changes in
legalese,
documents.
Check in all the parameters under state law, and that's literally consuming what would typically be our full days on top of all the other pieces.
And remember that there are tails to that process that we never talk about. And I don't think that Mr. Snook devoted a lot of time to those tails. There was some reporting, but every time you approve one of these projects, there is a fairly extensive annual reporting requirement that becomes part of the normal workload. So anytime you provide a business subsidy, that's an additional piece of the workload for whoever is doing economic development. There are other programs that we have that are very minor economic development type programs, like the residential rehab loan program, that require reporting on a regular basis as well. So there's a lot that comes with each project that you approve.
Well, that kind of gets to my question, if I may. We talked about this in our goal setting. We want to make sure we have enough staff to do this. Do we have the staff to do it? Do we need to staff up for it? And that's where I need you guys to fill me in.
We haven't wrapped around what it is we want to do.
True, but I mean, just in what we've done so far in the past 2 months.
Well,
All right, let Mark talk.
2 months, that's okay. Just for history, for those of you who haven't been here as much, I mean, for many years, Shakopee didn't really need to devote anything to that because we had John Albinson, who, with Valley Green Industrial Park, did an awful lot of the, what would be traditional or what would be considered city stuff himself. In 1996, the council at that time decided that they wanted to devote a full-time position to that, and that's when Paul Snunk was hired. Paul did, some of the things out in the industrial park, but quite a bit of his time was devoted to downtown stabilization, redevelopment, those sorts of things, looking at First Avenue corridor, things such as that. Paul took another job with the city of St. Paul. We at that point hired a half-time economic development director because we did not think that we had enough activity to keep a full-time position open. That happened to be Chris Wilson. As Chris will say, she didn't particularly like that end of it, but she did her best on it. But at the time we looked at it, things started to slow down. We didn't feel that there was enough work to keep her justified on that. We did hire a consultant, and we still have that consultant under contract today. But with the economy slowing down, there really had not been a lot of activity until, 6 months ago, Michael? Was that when things started?
It began at the beginning of
TriStar?
2011 with TriStar's initial inquiry, sure.
And there's, over the past few months, it's been probably as much activity or more so in the last 4 or 5 years combined. That's a great opportunity. That's good things happening in Shakopee right now. The question is, how long will that continue? Will we reach a saturation point that you'll feel that, well, geez, maybe we shouldn't be doing any more TIF until these come in? There are how many hundreds of jobs potentially with these 3 projects? Well, with 2
about
projects,
200
anyway.
jobs in 2 years after completion of each of the projects, perhaps more in reality, but that's the projection for just those 2 facilities. I guess I would lay a couple of other things on the table that you might want to consider for the long term. And again, let me stick my size 13s in my mouth, but we have parts of the city and areas outside the city that you ought to be talking about in terms of what it is you hope to do with them. And I'm going to name them. On the east side, there is a long-term redevelopment potential with the city of Savage for areas that were originally platted as rural residential, and you've got a real mishmash of rural residential, pre-annexation industrial uses, and now some more modern sewer development, both commercial and residential, on both sides of that area. You have a junkyard there that you inherited. There's the west side, and most particularly leading out to the 69-169 interchange. And as you heard during the presentation on Legos, that's one of the key corridors. It's going to take a lot of work between the city, the county, and the township to stage those areas, to bring sewer, water, and roads to it, to make economic development advantage of it. You still have areas that have potential for, and I'm sorry to use the word, Matt, but redevelopment privately, hopefully.
You're not that sorry to use the word.
No, I am, because it's gotten me into trouble before. I've had someone threaten to shoot me when I said the term.
It wasn't
in years
me.
past. It wasn't him.
Thank you for the clarification.
It was not him. He did laugh at it, though. But you've got areas in the First Avenue County Road 69 corridor where there is some real potential for the long term that is unrealized. And I think you need to have a discussion about areas like that and what it is you want to see them being and what that means in terms of the kinds of businesses and development you want to see in those areas.
So with
for the community for the long term, before you can figure out who you're trying to market to. Now, in fairness to the EDAC, that's one of the first things that we attempted to talk about, and we did bring it forward to the council for their information as they talked about those areas. There were some differences between what some of them think and what the scale private sector group thought about some of the areas, and you folks are going to have to work out what you really want to see for the long term. But I think that's the level of discussion you need to have before you decide how you're going to staff up. Because if you're starting, well, and I missed one. I'm sorry, Valley Green. Valley Green, we've got about 500,000 square feet of vacant space. Much of it is not usable.
And
because the market's not going to take it.
Michael, so with that said, you're saying we have to have those discussions before we have staff to do them. How do we get to have those discussions without, is it just us sitting around a table like this saying, let's put some industrial buildings at 69-169? I mean, is that all the direction you need from us? Because we can do that pretty quickly. But
no.
Right,
no,
so that's what
it's
I'm saying.
much more complex than that.
Well,
but what I'm saying is that
wait
you
just a
have to
second, let
have
me
a
finish.
basic, a fairly high-level discussion about which areas of the city you want to concentrate on.
But how do we get
And-
to that without having staff to get all that put together for us? That's what I'm asking. Do we have that to get that level of information right now?
You know, I don't think it's that difficult.
The first step is,
From a standpoint, you can identify the areas and where the infrastructure is and what you would need to do to get pad-ready sites.
We already did much of that with the
First-
EDAC and reported it to the city council.
Clay.
My turn. The flip chart thing is a good idea, but not a flip chart. We don't want to use yesterday's technology and techniques. It's got to be digital.
Want a flip chart on
A
your
flip chart
screen.
is GIS, Geographic Information System, GIS maps. They're nothing but flip charts. You take a map and then you flip down other overlays.
That's where I was
onto it.
going.
So we
have it. Got the tools.
and we already got most of that,
Yeah,
I think.
we've got a lot of it.
So we could quickly set up, well, not quickly, but find somebody who understands websites to update our current website, make it more interactive, have a section for developers where they click on the GIS map and say, this is the zoning, find what's.
It's available in Scott counties right now. But
Yeah, and they'll share.
But does this coordinate?
Yep.
I mean, does your GIS coordinate with planning? Does this coordinate with what the county has?
we get the information from the county.
Does this go to SPUC?
The
Is any of this
Carver
coordinated?
County GIS people are coordinating with Scott County people who are coordinating with Dakota County people. They can also coordinate with us.
Okay.
We're this close to coordinating with SPUC.
They all,
Ready to share files.
they all speak pretty much the same language.
the first question that has to be asked and answered is,
I wasn't done yet.
okay,
Keep going.
So that's one thing that we want to, I think, make a decision on, is that we're going to go with computerized digital presentations anytime we can, because it's so much easier and cheaper and quicker, and lets the people who are possibly interested in Shakopee do much of the work themselves, and then decide if they want to call us, and we'll figure out who they should talk to. But backing up from even the discussions you guys have had so far, I think we first need to sit down and say, what kind of businesses or what kinds of things do we want from development? Do we want to create jobs, or do we want to increase tax base, which is more important? Because you can.
Or do you want to simply provide a helping hand for small business people? And there are communities that do that. I will share a perspective on that because my wife and I, over the last 20 years, have started and/or ran 4 or 5 separate small businesses.
Yeah.
It would never have occurred to me that the city or the county would be my primary resource for that kind of business unless it involved the creation of significant property wealth or jobs.
That was going to be my next point. Do we want to focus in more on large companies or small business. There's been there's the last number of years, there's always been all this talk about how small business creates all these jobs for the economy, but they also lose a great deal of jobs because they much more quick, yeah, than 75%, is it still, in the first 5 years, fail. So, you know, while they create more jobs, they go out of business and lose more jobs too. So do we want to spend a lot of time on small business, or do we want to focus more on larger established businesses, corporations, things like that? And then thirdly, do we want to focus on new development, on bare land or township properties, or undeveloped, what little undeveloped land we have left in the city, or do we want to figure that will take care of itself and then focus more on redevelopment?
Or existing.
Or, you know, keeping existing or redeveloping areas. And I can think of a few commercial industrial areas that are, in my opinion, relatively blighted. But
Can't you do both? Can't you do both, or we have a new development area?
Well,
redevelopment area?
My thought here is that, do we need to pick one, or do we want to pick one or the other to start with?
Yeah, that's a good question you got to ask.
I mean, I'm thinking we want to start as focused as we possibly can, and making it a smaller endeavor to get us going, and then expand out from that focused point.
So I have that underlined. Who is our customer? As to, is that what you're getting at, right?
Well, are we looking for a customer who is creates lots of jobs for the area and is going to develop on new land? Or are we looking for...
Take a couple of examples. One which is a greenfield example, to a large extent, is the area that's currently in the township, around the intersection of 69 and 169. Are you looking to prepare that to bring in businesses like the couple that you're considering now for tax abatement and tax increment financing? Another one, to pick up on the redevelopment theme, is one that Bruce started work on, and that is the eastern portion of County Road 101. You've got a lot of established uses there. You do have water there, but you don't have sewer to some of those properties. And I think the likelihood is that by extending water and sewer to those areas, you will over time, per se, get some redevelopment. It may be the same businesses, or it may be different businesses. But that's a potential redevelopment scenario. And I think the short answer is you can do a couple of different kinds of things, but then you have to figure out which areas you're going to focus on so you can understand the costs of doing that before you move forward.
One of the changes that the new economy has is that there are not, as Mr. Moss said at the last meeting, private sector is probably not going to be willing to take the risk to put large-scale acreages of sewer and water pipe in the ground. They're not willing to take that risk. If we go down to 69 to 169 as the next Valley Green or the next big industrial park, are you as a council representing, you know, the taxpayers of the community willing to take the risk that that cost goes in there and it may or may not come back in time, that you have to come up with some other source of funding to repay those bonds because the assessments haven't played out?
And we've got a couple other kickers in here too. If we're not going to use new land and focus on existing lands, then we're going to allow our neighbors to expand taking our land.
Well, here's, I think, Matt, part of the answer to that question is that you don't have a lot of opportunities within the municipal boundaries for that kind of development along the corridors that remain.
Okay.
You've basically got 83 and Marshall Road, and Bruce is going to know this stuff better than me, but while we do have sewer on 83, it really was contemplated for residential development that would occur south of Valley View Road. We don't really have areas that the city's guided for additional commercial industrial. Back in 1995 through 98, the Planning Commission and City Council, when they looked at what I first drafted as a land use plan, said, You don't need those areas for expansion of industrial because we got all this other stuff here. Marshall Road has its own challenges because of the cost of the first and second high elevation for water and extending sewer into those areas. And as we get further south, there are additional wetland areas, and you've got the problem of redeveloping not really that old residential plats that were developed as rural residential. So it's kind of a difficult area for that expansion. It seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that per se says you're really looking to the west, to areas that are largely in the township now, except a small part of the area that was annexed a few years ago on Marystown Road.
And how do we decide who qualifies for help and who doesn't? I mean, as the guy said on the 401, you got to get something in order to give something. And to me, it's you know, we need to be making jobs, decent paying jobs.
All right, with that is that who you think our customer is? We've got, just so everybody knows, we've got a little less than 10 minutes here.
I think everybody's our customer, whether it's the person that wants
Everybody can't be our customer.
Well, you know, if somebody comes in and says, I just bought these 3 houses down here on Bluff Street, I want to tear them all down and do something different, that's a customer, whether we like it or not. Doesn't mean we're going to help them necessarily, but they are a customer, and we need to make sure that we've got the tools to help them along.
We will definitely help them along, but what we're talking about is we need to focus where our city resources are going, because we can't go in and hire 20 people to handle every single person that comes in.
Well,
from my perspective, I want to get a process and a customer service system, for lack of a better word, in the city that we utilize for people who come to Shakopee, and I would like to have that if there are 20 good paying jobs, whatever it is, that will be newly created jobs in Shakopee, that we'll give you this. And we have our own parameters that we decide on as a city council, that this is what we do as Shakopee. This is who we are. This is who we want to come to Shakopee. And it may differ between different areas. If we want to have the 69-169 corridor be a niche development or some sort of industrial niche, like Chaska has biotech and things like that, we need to identify those and have that as where we're going. So we can't have everybody as our customer. That's not gonna work, and it's not going to. We need to help everyone, but we can't have everybody be our core customer. This is how we do work. So I'd like to hear from everybody real quick who you think our core customer is, economic development wise, for Shakopee, or who you think it should be.
I'm sorry.
Small business.
We can't have everyone as our customer, but we need to help everyone.
We're not going to.
I think that recognizes a reality. And it's the reality today, it's been the reality for years. Someone walks through the door, someone emails, or someone picks up the phone, and they have a question like that, including the guy who wants to have 25,000 wrecked cars at Raceway Park. We'll give them information, and if there are alternative paths for them to pursue, we'll provide them that information. That does not mean, especially in a case like that, that I'm going to help them along to realize that business.
Exactly.
So they are not the business prospect that today I'm going to devote any time or energy on for the city, because there's not enough of a return for the city as a community.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that you want us to be able to respond to everyone. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to encourage everyone.
Right, we're not.
You're looking for thresholds, kind of. 20 jobs gives you.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to hold everybody's hand and be that customer service piece that I think that we should be moving forward. So what is that to everybody? What is the priority? Whose hand we hold through the process? Since you're not going to say, I'll go this way, Bruce.
I'll say it.
Is there really quiet?
Spin-off businesses.
Yeah,
I
really.
want to see the start of companies that can provide some really innovative spin-offs that are going to provide tax capacity, because you've got to build that for the way things are looking in the future and the things you're going to have to fund. So sometimes your current jobs aren't going to always be that thing that pushes.
You mean by spin-off?
Well,
growth potential.
can I jump in here?
You know what I'm
You've-
talking.
You've got Seagate, which of course is not a Minnesota company, but they have a pretty substantial plant here. I think you're talking about businesses that are their suppliers
Right.
somewhere in their process.
Yes.
If you can move them into the community and get the synergy of that concentration of businesses in that sector.
Right. Because the more you diversify this base, the more rock solid, and we're gonna get into this when we go out on this debt refunding, they really look seriously at this in communities, is how diverse is that workforce?
And we've been really lucky with that,
Very
right?
lucky, very lucky.
Are you gonna get all the way around?
Just pop in.
Go.
I do have something, I guess, as an engineer, but I guess I look at it as, you look at the city and there's different areas. We have a railroad track, we have, and I know the guy from the county mentioned that it's underutilized. We could use it for a truck to rail, capacity. There's businesses that could spin off from that. Then there's other areas that we could look as a, possibly a tech center. This is a higher tech center. These are more industrial users, but they're grouped in. And I think you need to identify these areas, and then you can look at what is the cost of developing these areas. I mean, I can think of 3 good projects. It wouldn't take a lot. That would get some things very pad ready in the near future.
So you're saying identify niches throughout the city.
Yeah, I think you can't just say we want spin-off, because that won't work on the railroad track area. But I think you need to identify your areas, what it is, what could be attractive there, and then what are the possibilities of each area of, like take that GIS map that Steve was talking about, lay out these zones. Okay, here's our zones, and what do we want to see go in there? Does it make sense? Then because I don't think it's one size fits all. I mean,
Could these low-ceilinged warehouses be retrofitted for a high-tech company?
Oh, I'm sure they could.
All right, before we go any further, we've got 2 minutes left. Do we want to continue discussion until 10:30, or do we want to be at 10:15?
Well, let's try and make it quick and wrap it up and then continue the discussion another time, but I think truck to rail is huge over on the east side. I think our business would utilize that, or rail to truck, I guess it would be. But I think we would seriously miss the boat if we don't start focusing on 169 and 69 area and move that forward down 69 to try and redevelop or help develop some of those areas that need a little push along. We can't ignore the east side of that sewer area. I think that's important too, but we can't obviously do everything. So I think the 69, 169 area, and I like the idea of focusing on medical technical, that idea.
The other thing that comes to mind just for me as I think this through is we're talking about attracting new, right? Attracting new tends to be more expensive than retention. So I think there also has to be a piece of retention strategy as well, and what kind of relationships and what kind of dialogue do we have with our existing large base.
And I think the chamber could play a key role in that.
And I think they already do.
Yeah.
That's also a piece of the discussion with the business planning for a first-stop shop in Scott County, perhaps to be housed at the CDA. I absolutely agree. I mean, one of the projects we haven't talked about is a 300,000 square foot project. It's a company that originally moved here from someone else, but they've been here for a few years, and they're adding 300,000 square feet.
Yeah, so those are big potential.
Right. Imagine Print Solutions.
I'm going to focus on jobs, and I'll tell you a little why I feel that way. With jobs, good-paying jobs, comes tax base, because they have to put a building up to house them jobs, and that building has a tax base. The people that work there tend to want to live here and buy a house and spend their money in town, which props up your local economy, and it's just kind of a winner all the way around the block. The Met Council projections say we're going to need jobs. Scale says we're going to need jobs. Scott County and Shakopee say we're going to need jobs. And the unemployed would tell you that we need jobs. So, to me, if we're going to diversify and get our commercial industrial base back to, at the prime, I think it was almost 50-50. So now we're a little less than that. We're probably 44 44 commercial and industrial to 56 residential. So we need to focus on our commercial and industrial and create these jobs. What kind they are, I love the private sector. I don't care what they are, really. I mean, if they're good paying jobs and they've got any kind of life history to them, I'm all
Don't
ears.
pollute the environment too much. And
Well, you know, let RAR do that or whatever, or the Minnewaca too.
What?
Never mind, never mind. But would you also be willing to say, focus on jobs out at 69, 169?
You know, we're gonna have to put it on the radar. I brought it up at the goal setting session that we had. The problem with that is it's not something that we could put our thumb on for next year. I just don't believe that's gonna happen. I mean, we're gonna have to start with a council to township meeting and have that discussion, and we're gonna have to bring Scott County into the discussion. We're gonna have to have.
In the meantime,
it's a
Bruce
long
has
range.
said to you, and I think he's right, that he's got at least a couple, I think you said 2 or 3, potential, we'll use Met Council terminology, low-cost, high-impact projects. The sewer project on the east side of 101 is one of those. So I don't know that you'd make that a lower priority, because that's one where you can make a really dramatic, immediate impact. And you might see some fruit from that fairly quickly.
So what is the best way for those ideas and those things to go from staff level and in your guys' mind and our theoretical 30,000 foot level and get those together and actually make things happen?
We need to see the cost. You know, give us a rough estimate, give us a rough timeline.
Well, from you guys, how do you know which ones to, how do they know which ones to go after?
I'm not sure that we have identified, I mean, we've identified a lot of things tonight.
Right, we need to
We
prioritize
haven't
it.
identified enough to do that.
Well, that's a numbers one. The 69, 169 is beginning a conversation with the township and the
Right.
county. That's not really, we're not putting numbers on it. We're gonna need to look at those pieces.
Well, you need to
but
figure out how to get services there and what that's gonna
that's
cost.
part of it, but we don't know what's going in there yet. We haven't had the discussions, it's still township. So this is 3-4 years down the road. This is conversation right now. But to put immediate economic development on the table, I'd like to see that sewer project and see what that all
You
entails.
do know there's an interchange being built by 2014, so that you can plan ahead that far. And then see that, okay, there will be interest in that.
There will be.
Interchange.
And we don't
Talking
have
about
to.
69, 169.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
gonna be an interchange, so
And
then.
We don't have to stub it to each property because we don't know what's going there, but we do have to get our service lines in the ground.
Yep.
And figure out where they're gonna come in. I mean, it would really be bad planning if we wait, they do 69 and 169 interchange and stuff, and then we come and tear it up to put a sewer.
Yeah, oh yeah, hey, we need a
Right.
sewer.
So
Yeah.
just so you know, that
That's
area
all done.
needs a big lift station and a big force main all the way to Marystown. So when you.
We can't go into the Chaska or Shakopee-Chaska interceptor?
No, that's a force main, we can't tap into that.
I thought we had extra
Unless you have
capacity.
more force.
Yeah, unless we have more force than
I
that.
thought we bought extra capacity into that line.
We do, but our sewer plan shows, and Met Council approved, we have to run our own force main back to, I mean, it's a big sewer project.
Back to L16.
We need to have that area identified and agreed upon.
And can you put pipe in the ground dry under so it doesn't have to be bored in later?
You certainly can do anything you want.
Well, I understand that.
Price tag to all of it.
I mean, is that something?
Yeah, it's, I mean, part of it, when we're dealing with the 69, 169 interchange, we'll have to look at, you know, they're building a big embankment, well, do we?
He's an engineer. He can move mountains. He just
Couldn't we
gotta
run
have
it
the
down
money.
69 and have?
All right, we're not gonna get anywhere talking about sewer tonight. Okay.
One quick thing about retaining businesses and your idea of the spin-off thing. If we, or somebody contacted the larger businesses in Shakopee that we want to really make sure stay here and retain them, go to them and say, you know, who are your suppliers? Who would you most like to see situated closer to you? And then go approach those companies. And would that be doing two things at once? Would it be promoting spin-off businesses to come here and also supporting the existing businesses we want to stay here?
That's a good point.
Or
I don't
does,
know until you ask them.
or does that hurt your diversity? The devil's advocate in me would say, this one goes out of business, they take them with them, and now you got 2 down.
That's a good point.
It can depend. If they've got the capacity to
to create a number of different products, it may not matter. A couple of caveats about that, and it's just based on my 36 years' experience.
That's all.
Whatever staffing you have, you don't want your staff talking to them. You want other businesses in the community having that discussion with them and reporting back to you so that you know what is the most efficacious way for you to help them. Because my experience with that kind of retention and expansion effort, and I've done it a few times, is first of all, they don't believe that you're serious. Secondly,
What, do you mean the first person you contact?
if you're a public employee
It's met
saying,
with
I'm here
skepticism.
to help you. Secondly,
Kinda
especially in
oxymoronic, isn't
recent years, they view it as an interference. And, you know, I will confess to you, I think I'm actually pretty good at that kind of stuff. I did a lot of cold calling, but it takes a number of years to build enough of a relationship that they will give me anything worthwhile. But they might give another business executive or owner in the community that information. The only way the problems we had with Spuck and Imagine Print Solutions came forward is because they got extremely frustrated and wrote letters to the city administrator and the city council.
All right.
So be careful about that. Make sure that you've got a way to interface with them that they will respect and respond to.
So this is a question simply for staff, not council. What do you folks need from us? What direction do you need from us to start moving on the mishmash of things that we talked about tonight?
Understanding that we've got, what, $160,000 we saved in not having to plow any snow, plus the $43,000 workers'
Thought we
comp
were gonna use that
kickback.
for council pay increase.
We got $200,000 just floating around, but, waiting for us to spend, so.
Right, right.
You were
I
gonna
don't
change
think
your
so.
salaries to match county commissioner somewhere?
So what?
I threw that idea out earlier, but it didn't fly.
What can we do? What do you need from us to say, knowing that we've got this many problems, this many resources, and this much time to get these things done? What do you need from us to say, do this? How do we get to that point where there are, I know, that's what I'm asking. I said specifically
Why
not
don't you let
council.
us sit down as staff? I mean, I don't know if we have enough time.
Is that what it is?
We've struggled with this for 20 years, and I don't know that in, 54 minutes that we're going to come to a conclusion that we can do. It would be helpful for us to try to analyze this and bring back something to a future one of these, and I don't know if you want to take it through the EDAC. I suspect that you want as the council to see this first.
Actually, I suggest that you take a look at what we've done at the EDAC and decide whether or not they're on the same wavelength, because in some respects, I think they are. But their recommendations haven't gotten a full hearing here on marketing and areas to focus on. Now, we still have some discussions where we'll get one person who says this about an area and another person who says this. We have someone who wants to have warm, cozy coffee shops everywhere, and I love warm, cozy coffee shops, but not every area of the city is suitable for warm, cozy coffee shops. But I think to start our internal discussion at staff, we should be taking a look at that and bringing it forward so that you see what we've tried to do with them, because we've been following the work plan that was set forward for them in 2009 by the joint group that included the chamber and Spuck and, who am I missing?
Well, the Economic Development Task Force that was put
Yes.
together a couple years ago.
Well, can we try to get consensus on something? Do we all agree on the current city business subsidy policy?
Well, you will have an opportunity to look at it. As Mark told you, I
We
just learned yesterday.
just
we were
modified
part
it.
of public hearing, and it will be revised.
Again?
It will be revised again, because in my conversation with one of the attorneys at Kennedy and Graven, she indicated we have to do something with the floor wage level beyond what we did already. And so, just to preview it, I'm likely to say to you, make that floor wage level
175% of federal minimum wage. Start there, and then vary based on the criteria that we have in the amendments already. So you'll have an opportunity on May 5th at that public hearing to weigh in on whether or not you think what I did and Jim Thompson and now Julie Eddington have vetted is something that you agree on. It will certainly address the situation we discussed with Sanmar, which was, we were saying 275% of minimum wage. That's 1994. That's not a realistic wage in some sectors. But at 175%, we're talking about $12 to $14 range. That certainly is workable for warehousing, for example, which Sanmar was going forward. So, and it
So
gives
with
you a
the-
number of other factors that you can use to set alternate job and wage goals depending on the fact situation for the business that's coming to you.
That's important.
So the work of the ADAC, I mean, is that something that staff could prioritize for us and make a recommendation of prioritization? I mean, I feel like that's where.
Yeah, I think that's already been
this is
done
what we
for the
need.
most part. It's
That's
just a matter
already
of
been
putting
put
it
in
in.
place.
EDAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah, we held several meetings to go over that.
Okay, so that's one priority. We got that. When can we expect to have that in front of city council?
Here again.
Tomorrow?
Well, except you're running into, again, the issues of, look at the other pieces that are already put in place for the meetings and the things that are coming.
Yeah,
before
I would
them, the
ask that we not
decisions.
do it until we get through these 3 assistance projects, which is the last continued public hearing now is gonna be on May 15th.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at
So
some
probably
things
in
already
June.
backing up here, and they're just, it gets back to, you don't have enough staff to deal with all of these things and add a whole new creation to make
I
this
think
happen.
that
Do we
was-
need a consultant then?
If we didn't say it directly, I think that's what we're trying to say, is we would like you guys to give us some proposed
Well,
numbers for
and-
staff increases.
Right.
And to Counselor Punt's question, one of the things that Mark and I talked about, and so I followed up on with our current consultant, was, can we utilize you more than we do? And his response was, yeah, but it's not gonna be on site. So if we're talking about someone who's devoting a lot of time to one of these priority areas that are as yet unidentified, at least this consultant is not someone who will do that. And frankly, consultant costs are gonna be pretty expensive, I
Yep.
would think. So, so you will be looking at staffing at some point.
It seems like all of our staffing needs are around, you know, the TIF and abatement assistance programs.
No, they're in a lot of areas.
Well, that's what I heard earlier, where it's the follow-up, it's the follow-up, it's the follow-up.
Well,
And there's
right.
3 of them going on right now.
Right now it is, but on any given day, just within community development, I'm not even talking about public works and engineering. It's on which signs do you want me to pick up? Okay, I don't pick them up. I let other people do it most of the time. Which properties do you want us to enforce on because someone called to complain? Which person contacted you and said they're not getting a loan fast enough, and so we better do something about that?
I'll take the loan. but I'll
What's
keep the
Met
stop sign I got in
Council
my
doing
garage.
with transit funding? Have they sent a letter saying that we need to give them back money today, and do we need to fight that fight? And those are the kinds of things we're doing. You know, yes, that stuff is taking a lot of time since you said go ahead with these, and it will. I mean, we're talking about tomorrow night, April 18th, April 24th, May 1st, May 15th.
So.
And the documents are not simple documents. You've probably seen them before.
So we need to
Which
make
is
sure.
why for like this ebb and flow of activity, do we need a consultant to help? Because we now have 3 major projects.
We already have consultants helping. We have an attorney at Kennedy and Graven and a couple of analysts at Springstead who are actually preparing the runs for the tax abatement and the TIF, put together the TIF plan. We're just reviewing it internally.
All
We're
right,
not
so
putting
we
it
are
together.
at 10:30 now. We are going to cut this off. What I would like to see, let's put economic development back on the table for this type of discussion in 2 months.
Okay.
At this type
June?
meeting.
Yes. And at that time, I would like from staff, and anybody can jump in and correct me if we don't think this is what we want to do, but I would like to have recommendations and discussion topics from staff as to what you need from city council in order to make these big decisions that have to be made. What specifically you want from us in order to continue to move forward. If that is a staffing goal that needs to be set up, what you want from us for staffing, whether it's identifying economic development areas. If you put those half dozen areas together that you need recommendations from city council as to what do you want to do with this, we'll talk about it and we'll give that information to you from our perspective, and we can work together to get those kinds of things, simply to get some traction, because I think this meeting shows that we need to get some traction on something to start moving it forward, get the flywheel going, and what it is you need from us. I don't know exactly what that slice of traction looks like, but I think we would get a couple.
Well, a review of what the EDAC is already.
That we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we get Bruce to bring back the three small Big Bang projects that you were thinking about?
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Can we have like a leak come back with, you know, and probably Bruce is gonna have to put some input into that, but what are we really looking at for a process on 69, 169, you know, in this West End?
Have a timeline there?
Well, if they could just kind of kick around and, you know, I'm sure first is gonna be a joint meeting with the township. Bruce is gonna talk about what's gonna be needed for sewer infrastructure. Mark brought up, can we put dry pipe in the ground so that we don't have to rip the road up to redo it? And then when somebody is interested, boom, put the lift station in and the forest main in, and you're a business. You know, he can plan that better than anyone sitting here. And he can help him plan that.
Absolutely.
You know, and give us a real timeline of what needs to happen, because that might be 5 years or longer out. And it's
As you
contingent
think
on the
about
township.
that,
What's that?
As you think about that, think about which two of you want to be on the ongoing planning body with the township and with the county to address changing the orderly annexation agreement and actually coming up with a staging plan for how you're going to get that stuff in the ground. Because it's going to take a planning body with elected officials on it for it to get traction, in my view.
For how long?
Well, it depends.
Depends on what kind of reception you get
Yeah.
from the township. Because my own view is, frankly, those discussions really ought also include Louisville Township, because
Scott
that's the
County.
corridor we're talking about.
And Scott County.
And I think Scott County agrees. The question is how you bring them along, given how Louisville Township feels at present. So it might be, in that regard, worth having a specific work session on how to plan for that. That includes county staff to talk about those issues, and maybe not initially, but at some point then you invite township folks in to say, we think we should do some sort of planning committee or commission with these goals in mind.
We're gonna have to have a future industrial park.
I mentioned this before, is this something that should come out of scale and then trickle back to us?
Well, you know, you may remember that there are some elements of that that are in what Scale is doing now in strategy development. And that is an area that they've identified, or that we've identified, where planning and work and investment needs to take place. But again, you've got to put together what the timeline and strategies are for getting there.
And you
All right.
still
Somebody
got-
needs to drive
Still
it.
got the elected bodies that.
Any last words?
Okay, just so I'm clear. Here for the second meeting of June, which by the way, I won't be here for that, but we need a recommendation from you, direction from the council as far as, this is, staff needs to give you information so that we can move things forward on 169, 69, and any other areas that we see as priorities that are needed for economic development.
Right.
The other one that was mentioned was 101 in the discussion.
East 101.
East 101.
So, yeah, just other.
Related not just to sewer, but Bruce mentioned it, use of rail. And Scale did specifically say we need to study and figure out how to make use of that asset in that corridor.
Would we be targeting, that's where we would target a company like a rail shipper?
Yeah.
Okay, before we have any further discussion, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Didn't think I was gonna get a second there for a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned at 10:36.